Good evening, all, and welcome to the monthly meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals, which is also known as the BZA. My name is Charles Smith, and I'm the chair of the board. This board is made up of 5 citizens appointed by the Circuit Court. In addition to myself, we have Judy Freshman to my immediate left, Inta Malice, who is vice chair, to my immediate right, Paul Melnick, who we assume will be joining us later. He would sit to my far right, and Peter Owen is to my far left. Also present are professional staff, including Stephen Rissy, who serves as our secretary and coordinator for the BZA on the extreme left, and Mark Hamela, who is a zoning technician at the front table manning the computer, and Simon Kane sitting alongside of him, senior management analyst, and Pamela Banner, who is sitting to our immediate far right. She is the person to whom you will give your speaker slips and the box on the front corners where you'll get them from before the item is called. Now, I want to thank everyone for being here, but I have to ask that to avoid disruptions that you put your cell phone or mobile device in a silent mode so that it doesn't interrupt our proceedings. Now, on the front table, and Mr. Melnick is joining us now, on the front table, you will find a reference copy of the reports which have been prepared by the staff for each case. There is one report, there may be more, but essentially there's one report for each case. If you have not seen the report for a case that you're interested in, come up, take a look at it, and then return it to the front table so that others who might want to review it can do so. Now, our powers are prescribed in the Code of Virginia and are set out in further detail in the county zoning ordinance. This board doesn't have the power to zone or rezone property or to amend the regulations that are set forth in the ordinance. That power rests only with the county board. What we do have the authority to do is 3 things. We can decide and approve use permits that allow modifications of placement requires for structures on 1 and 2 family lots where there's no option in the zoning ordinance to allow such modifications. 2, we can grant variances from specific requirements of the zoning ordinance. And 3, we can decide appeals of decisions of the zoning administrator. There's some ancillary things we can do, but in general, with respect to the public, those are our 3 areas of power. When approving use permits, the Board of Zoning Appeals may impose conditions that it deems necessary in the public interest, including limiting the duration of the use permit. Now, in order to approve a use permit, the law requires that we find that the proposal meets certain conditions, and that those conditions are that the proposal in the use permit wouldn't adversely affect the health or safety of persons residing in the neighborhood, will not be detrimental to public welfare or injurious to property or improvements in the neighborhood, and will not be in conflict with the purposes of the master plans and land use and zoning related policies of the county. Now, to do this, we have to consider whether the modification will promote compatibility of development with the surrounding neighborhood, because the structure's overall footprint, size, and placement are similar to structures on the property surrounding the lot in question, and whether the modification will help preserve natural landform, historical features, and/or significant trees and foliage. When granting variances, however, the burden of proof is on the applicant to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that it meets the following criteria: that its strict application of the ordinance would unreasonably restrict utilization of the property, or that granting the variance would alleviate a hardship due to a physical condition relating to the property or improvements thereon at the time of the effective date of the ordinance, or that the granting of the variance would alleviate a hardship by granting a reasonable modification to a property or improvements thereon requested by or on behalf of a person with a disability, and the property for which the variance is being requested was acquired in good faith, and any hardship was not created by the applicant. Also, that the variance granted will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property and nearby properties in the proximity of the geographic area, and that the condition or situation of the property concerned is not of so general or recurring a nature as to make reasonably practicable the adoption of an amendment to the ordinance, and that the granting of the variance will not result in a use that is not otherwise permitted on the property or change the zoning classification of the property, and lastly, that the relief or remedy obtained through the variance is not available through a special exception process as provided for under the zoning ordinance and or subdivision ordinance. Now, when deciding appeals of the zoning administrator, this board must use its judgment to determine if the administrator was correct. This evening, cases will be called. We don't have any zoning appeals. We only have variances and use permits. And those cases will be called, and a brief staff report and recommendation will be given. Those recommendations and the staff reports that I described are up front. Following that, board members will ask any questions of staff that we might have. Next, applicants or their representatives will be given an opportunity to make comments to support the application or appeal. If they choose to make a comment, you must come forward to the podium so that these comments can be recorded for the record. Next, all speakers for the item will be called. Speakers must fill out a speaker slip before the item is called, and those speaker slips, as I said before, are available on the corner of the dais to my far right. After we hear from speakers for and against the proposal, this board, we may ask the applicant for a brief opportunity we may provide them a brief opportunity to clarify any points. But we will, and we may ask questions, but we won't allow any cross-examination or direct questioning of the applicant by others. Now, we've deemed the following time limits for speakers to be sufficient. 20 minutes for applicants of appeals, and we don't have any of those. 5 minutes for applicants of use permits and variances. We have deemed 3 minutes for representatives of organizations and 2 minutes for individuals as sufficient. Now, with respect to individuals, if you're in a group and you are opposing or supporting, we encourage you not to repeat what others have said, so you may simply come to the mic and say, well, I support the preceding speaker, or my comments have been provided in writing for the record, and state your position. We encourage you to do that so that the proceedings move expeditiously. Now, after we've gathered all the information that we need and we've discussed the case, we'll decide the matter by voting on a motion that's duly made and seconded. A majority of this board is required to approve any motion. Now, any appeal from decisions of this board must be made to the circuit court in accordance with state law. Now, after your case of interest is heard, you're welcome to stay for the balance of this exciting session of zoning law, or you can leave at your convenience. Again, thank you. We're going to be here for the duration. Again, thank you all for coming, and I'm going to ask the secretary to call the first case.
Case number V-11488-19-UP-1 is a use permit request by Charles and Sarah Plaxico, the owners, to permit a rear setback of 6 feet to the screen porch, 5 feet to the porch eave from the rear property line instead of 21 feet to the porch, 19.5 feet to the porch eave as required, and to permit a rear setback of 3 feet to the built-in grill from the rear property line instead of 25 feet as required, regarding a new rear screen porch and built-in grill in the R10 zoning district on the premise known as 3505 North Jefferson Street. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution denying the use permit request. Staff has provided an alternative proposed resolution should the BZA see fit to approve the application as advertised. Additionally, the applicants have provided 5 additional conditions regarding the preservation of the existing tree that the BZA can elect to add to any motion of approval they see fit to grant.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Questions of Mr. Rissy, Mr. Owen?
What is staff's opinion of the submitted conditions that the applicant submitted?
I mean, without going through each one, staff does have some concern about the enforceability of some of the conditions provided.
Okay. I wonder about some less involved conditions that other communities have used in similar circumstances, such as, for example, just having 2 conditions. One, The applicant agrees not to construct any additional structures in the area between the rear of the house as shown in the application and the rear lot line, and in the event the large maple tree referred to in the application dies, the applicant will replace it by maintaining a tree of at least, let's say, 4 caliber, and of similar species acceptable to the zoning administrator in a similar location to that originally shown in the application. Do you feel that those conditions would be any more within the wheelhouse of staff to enforce than the ones submitted by the applicant?
So I'll go through each of these individually. For the second one, we have some condition that the zoning administrator doesn't have criteria to deem one tree versus another an acceptable species. It may be easier if you just said a maple, and then the applicant could just prove they planted a maple tree.
Okay.
The first one is a little bit more problematic. It's more of general theory, but the idea is that once the BZA approves a variance, that the property is then conforming and they can do additions to it that are otherwise allowed by right. So we do have some issue with putting in a condition that would prevent someone from doing something that would otherwise be allowed by right. Now, doing an addition in the rear 25 feet, that they obviously would need to come for another trip to the BZA, either variance or use permit. So that makes some sense, but just limiting the by right options seem problematic to staff.
It seems unusual,
No, it's the,
Yes.
it's the tree one?
but not necessarily illegal.
I am not going to say illegal, but certainly unusual.
Okay, thank you.
And let me follow up. In your opinion, is
Yeah, it is. No,
that condition, you're not saying it's unenforceable, are you?
this is,
But problematic in enforcement.
Problematic in enforcement is probably the best way to put it.
I guess my position would be most enforcement efforts are problematic in general. And they vary in degrees of
That's certainly
difficulty.
true.
Okay. Any other questions of the staff? Hearing none. I have one speaker signed up. First, Charles and/or Sarah Plaxico.
I didn't bring any walnuts this time. The season is finally ending, so that's helpful. No injuries yet this year. So again, thanks for the time. My wife's not here.
You are?
Charles Plaxico, the homeowner. Yeah, so again, thanks for the time today and the specific interest in this unique case. You know, as we noted in the updated materials, we spent a good bit of time with the county talking to them about the tree and talking to them about what we could do. I'm events, that guy's events. We got along really well and had a lot of discussions on it, and that's where our ideas came from in here. So that's on page 2 and 3. We also resolved the drainage question with our neighbor. So John put together a really good plan, and then we, of course, talked to them. So that was another thing we walked away with as homework, and I hopefully got an A on that. Just as a reminder, speaking of neighbors, we have 100% support of all of our neighbors, and some of them even spoke last time we were here. So, you know, the 2 conditions that were just talked about here, we're willing to agree to those as well, specifically with the maple. That's even better because we don't want this tree to go anywhere anyway. And you know, the by right piece, we're willing to give that up if it means we could achieve approval for this.
Thank you very much. Questions of Mr. Plaxico? Ms. Malice?
you mentioned that you resolved the drainage issue with your neighbor. Is that included in the plans that we have before us, or is that just an agreement that you've made?
No, yes. So we have both a drainage plan. It's in the last page of the packet.
So this is new?
That's right. Yeah, this is since the prior hearing.
Okay.
Yeah, so we worked out how the drainage would be coming off of the screen and porch, draining to away from their property. We shared that with Hillary, and she sent an email saying that let's see, we approve. Our address is 5519 Williamsburg, and that's them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions of the applicant? Jonathan Benson has risen to speak on your behalf, Mr. Plaxico.
Yes.
Are you Mr. Benson?
I am.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Please give your address.
Address is 10842 Green Drive in Lorton, Virginia. My connection to this project is I designed it. So
Okay.
I'm here to support with any questions. I drew up that drainage plan, so I know that, and all the other aspects of the project. So I was here for any questions you might have.
Thank you very much.
Mr.
Any
Chairman,
questions of Mr. Owen?
I have no questions. I'm prepared to make a motion.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I'd be happy to take your motion, Mr. Owen.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to move the alternative proposed resolution approval as advertised with some modifications.
Go ahead, please.
I would propose to add a new final whereas clause that says, whereas the BZA has found that this use permit is partially justified to preserve an existing significant tree. I would add 2 additional conditions. Number 5, applicants agree not to construct any additional structures between the rear of the house and the rear property line. And number 6, applicants agree that in the event that the large maple tree referred to in the application dies, the applicant will replace it by maintaining a maple tree of at least 4-inch caliper in a similar location to the original as shown in the application.
Thank
That's
you
my
very
motion.
much. Any questions about the motion? And
I'll second.
thank you. It's been moved by Mr. Owen, seconded by Ms. Malice, to approve the alternative motion with additions as articulated by Mr. Owen just now. Do you have those, Mr. Rissy?
I believe Mr. Owen may share them with me in
I'm
writing.
happy to share
Okay.
my text with the staff.
Thank you very much, Mr. Owen. Any further questions? Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The matter is granted. Thank you very much. Thank you for your work.
Thank you all.
And for your work also, and the cooperation of your neighbors.
Have a good night. Good experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Please call the next case, Mr. Rissy.
Case number V-11493-19-UP-1 is a use permit request by Sabir Johnson, the owner, to permit a left side setback of 5 feet to the wall, 4.2 feet to the eave, 2.3 feet to the planter boxes, and 2.1 feet to the window wells from the left side property line instead of 8 feet to the wall, 5 feet to the eave, planter boxes, and window wells as required, to permit a right side setback of 6.7 feet to the wall, 5.8 feet to the eave, 3.9 feet to the planter box, 3.8 feet to the entry canopy, 3.1 feet to the entry stairs, and stoop from the right side property line instead of 10 feet to the wall, 6 feet to the eave, planter box, entry stairs, stoop, and canopy as required, and to permit an aggregate side yard of 11.7 feet instead of 18 feet as required in the R5 zoning district regarding a new 3-story over basement single-family dwelling in the R5 zoning district on the premise known as Lot 171, Section 2, Moore's Addition to Clarendon, a portion of the property currently known as 930 North Edgewood Street. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions. And I'd ask you to please note there's supplemental material for this case that came in after the application packet was assembled and printed. There are 16 additional letters, primarily of concern from neighbors.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Questions of Mr. Rissy, Mr. Owen?
I just want to acknowledge that I am acquainted with one of the adjacent neighbors, but I believe I can overcome any bias that may create in my mind.
And I'll say for the record, I think this was said during the last hearing too, that I too have historically been acquainted with one of the neighbors, and that historic acquaintance won't interfere with my ability to be unbiased. Ms. Freshman?
Mr. Rissy, can you explain how, if in any way, the application differs from the first time we looked at it?
No. Staff is
No,
unaware.
you can't, or no, there have been no changes?
I can't explain the changes. I don't believe there are any changes. It is the same structure that you saw previously.
That was my conclusion when I read the packet, but given the controversy and the suggestions that some of us had, I think that's disappointing, but I'll listen. Thank you.
Any further questions of staff? Thank you very much, Ms. Freshman. If not,
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Owen.
With regard to the properties listed on the side setback and aggregate setback comparison tables on page 3 and 4, do any of them involve encroaching structures as tall as proposed by the applicant? If so, what are some examples of similarly tall encroaching structures?
So staff does not have height information for all the structures listed. specifically, we don't have elevations or building plans. However, most of the plats associated with the addresses have the number of stories listed. This listing of the number of stories on the plat may differ from the number of stories that zoning views the structure to have, but it's a gauge. But after that preamble, none of the structures that are in the staff report have more than 2 stories listed on their plat, according to the surveyor.
Thank you. That is helpful additional information.
Thank you, Mr. Owen. Any other questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Owen.
Neighbors have expressed concerns that if the applicant prevails, it may set a precedent for numerous additional 25-foot wide lots and Moore's addition to Clarendon becoming developable lots with similar structures built on them. Approximately how many buildable 25-foot wide lots are there currently in Moore's addition to Clarendon?
Staff also just hasn't had time to calculate for the entire Moore's Addition neighborhood, but I will say we did take the time to calculate this block in particular, and it would double the number of current parcels on this block from 20 to 40.
Thank you. That's helpful information.
Just to clarify, so there are roughly 20 in that district, other lots that are,
That block.
that block
That block
that
individually.
are 25 feet or so wide that could
Nope.
be,
No, there are currently
Could be
25 parcels, which is,
which are, okay.
if you want to pass this along, the green rectangles. And if you pass this other exhibit along, you'll see that the number of red rectangles is twice as many.
So could,
Are these a part of the record?
They can be.
They will be.
Mr.
They
Chairman,
are
I
now.
move that they be added to the record.
I'm going to add these to the record.
I ask unanimous consent that they be added to the record.
Yeah, so
with that,
ordered.
with no objection?
No objection.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask?
Go ahead.
Staff, just to follow up. So explain how this is possible. These are all previously subdivided lots?
So, okay. Staff can't confirm right now when each of these parcels was created individually. But as you saw in some of the exhibits last time, the original subdivision was set out in 1910. And at that time, it was set out in 25-foot wide lots. So most of those 25-foot wide lots that you see in the second exhibit were probably created at that time in 1910.
And because they were created as buildable in 1910, despite the fact that they don't conform to current zoning for the district, they're deemed to be buildable lots.
Only because the zoning ordinance has a provision in Article 16.1.1 that says in the R20, R10, R8, R6, and R5 districts where a lot has less width and or area than required in the subject district and was recorded under one ownership at the time of the adoption of this ordinance, July 15, 1950, such lot may be occupied by any use permitted in the respective districts. So it's only because of that specific allowance.
And we, in fact, have encountered cases like that before, where there was we had one case where there was a house that was actually built on two, and I think they took one down and built two, came in to build two.
I'm sure you have seen this come to you before.
Okay.
Any additional questions for Mr. Rissy? Mr. Owen?
Just a clarification. This is here for a use permit and not a variance or an appeal of a zoning administrator's determination. So sometimes we're asked to approve a variance that makes an unbuildable lot buildable. And in theory, we could be asked to review a zoning administrator's determination that a lot is unbuildable and overrule her and deem it buildable. But that's not what's happening tonight. Tonight is staff and the applicant think it's buildable. We're not being asked our opinion about whether it's buildable. We're being asked on this purportedly buildable lot, should it encroach to the edges under use permit? Am I correctly understanding what's before us and not before us tonight?
I would say correct.
Okay.
To the, except that not to the edges, but to the
Setback.
setbacks
setback, to change the
specified in the application.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Thank you. That's my last question, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Owen. That was very helpful. Well, Mr. Josan, Subir Josan, the applicant, Dr. Soban.
Oh, it's okay.
This is Josan.
Good
Welcome.
evening, Mr. Chairman, Board.
Evening.
Mr. Reese.
Again.
Just
Your address for the record.
Subir Johnson, 1305 North Herndon Street, Arlington, Virginia.
Welcome again.
Thank you. Just as a brief review, I am a neighbor in the neighborhood, just to remind you all, and I'm not a developer. I'm a physician, working physician, and this is a larger uphill battle than expected. And since our last meeting, it hasn't. I do have some documents for you that aren't or that weren't published publicly that prove that I am the sole trustee of the trust. A couple of opinions on the tree, which are very straightforward. I can give you those now to circulate, or I can speak and then give you those.
Those just deal with the disclosure statement. That would be fine. You can provide those right now.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
And without reiterating all the things that I said before, again, not a developer. And the idea for this home came out of a need for affordable housing. I was very authentic in explaining to the neighbors on my first engagement, which was only several days before the first hearing, that there's a potential to rent this house, not unlike the skinnier or smaller house a few blocks away on North Barton that was initially rented and then sold as a single-family home. So to recap what's happened since, because there has been no change to the application, however, I have the opinions on the tree, which basically the tree is a dead white oak tree. There are several of these large dead white oak trees in Arlington, unfortunately, with the rain and drought season that we had last year, and the tree needs to be removed. There are 2 written opinions. I had one that I couldn't get in writing, but 3 opinions. The idea of building this home still stands, which is to enhance the neighborhood, not detract from it, and to provide either affordable rental housing or an affordable single-family house for a first-time home buyer. I did meet with the architects, the land design firm, as well as the lawyer involved in doing this. And basically, in summary of that, after a meeting last week with the neighbors, the reason there are no changes to the application were that the requests to make the house 1 story smaller, perhaps to move the entryway, to change the architecture, to change the way the house looked, those sorts of requests, I was never going to make all of the neighbors happy. So the house is already smaller than it could be as far as height is concerned, significantly smaller as far as depth is concerned, meaning that it could be closer to the roadway. If we took the average of homes in the street, it's 10 feet smaller to the rear setback. And the mass of the house is significantly less than it could be, only because it was to accommodate some open space and also to accommodate the tree, which is not something that I want to take down. But in the end, the one issue we brought up already, buildable lot versus not buildable lot, I do have a few other things that I'll read off very quickly. Some questions and some comments. One is, after review of the packet for all of you, Mr. Reese, I want to make sure for the record that that what I've requested, the side setback variance, have been awarded to similar properties in this zone. Meaning that I'm not asking for any precedent or any amount of side setback that doesn't already exist or hasn't been granted by this board? That would be a question for you all.
No, keep going.
Do you want me to finish the questions?
Yes.
Oh, okay, by all means. The next question would be basically the same way. I could have perhaps proposed a larger footprint and done some research and done some average distances, but again, I chose to build a smaller home, and I want to make that for the record a second time placed on the record. Similar examples of the home do exist in the neighborhood. That's not a precedent. Labeling the rooms, which I did meet with the architect. We could label the rooms whatever we want to label them, whether it's a study or a family room, etc. Wouldn't change the nature of the home that I proposed, and that's why there weren't any changes to that. I did meet with the neighbors and looking at the feasibility of building a smaller structure. And first of all, the house makes no sense math-wise. Second of all, the majority of the costs of building this structure is in the infrastructure, building it to the first floor. So taking a floor off makes even more of a poor financial decision. I've met with a couple developers as well who, since our last meeting, since I met with the neighbors, who haven't done this since 1950 because it makes no financial sense, basically. That was the verdict. So I would ask you to stick to the facts of this case, thoroughly review the facts, consider the previous precedents that have been set, consider the fact that we deferred it. I've done some due diligence, and unfortunately haven't convinced any of the neighbors that this was a project they should support, although conceptually they all like the idea, just don't want it in their backyard. And that we have a staff recommendation to approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? There are none at this time. Thank you. Stand by. We have a number of speakers who have indicated a desire to speak by submitting speaker slips, and I'm going to call them in the order in which they've been presented to me. The first one would be Dimitrios Kombolias, and I know my pronunciation is off. Following Dimitrios will be Jessica Petrone, so stand by. Welcome, and provide your address and a correct pronunciation for the record.
The pronunciation is completely correct. I'm Dimitrios Kombolias, live at 934 North Daniel Street.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Thank you. Excuse me. Good evening. First of all, I'd like to thank the board and all the county folks who make this meeting possible tonight. I'm here on behalf of a group from the Lion Park neighborhood, many of whom are here tonight, all of whom live next door to, directly behind, or within a few houses of the property currently known as 937 North Edgewood Street. We are here tonight to express our opposition to this use permit request. When we were here first in September, we were quite a rambunctious group, a bit of a peanut gallery. Today is different. We heard you. No outbursts tonight. Have my word, take my word for it.
But for the record, I don't recall any of feeling on the part of the board that there was rambunctiousness that was evident with your group. We're excited and emotional, but perfectly within the appropriate decorum of this. Go ahead.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. So you've received letters from all of us, as well as the Lion Park Citizens Association, echoing our objections. We have specific concerns about both the setback distances and other features of the proposed skinny house, as well as more general concerns about the broad precedent this use permit would set. My neighbors and I are all here tonight, as I said, to share our concerns with you. In terms of specific issues with the structure itself, we'll all discuss those several concerns in detail, including the proposed height of the structure, potential drainage issues, the structure's reduced setback dimensions, resulting parking issues, and consistency with county land use and zoning. With respect to the proposed height of the structure, we wanted to note that none of the neighboring homes are 31 feet tall. While less than the maximum allowable height for this zoning area, the height and the small setbacks on each side would create a permanent shadow zone. There's less than a 7-foot setback on the right side and less than 5 feet on the left. We believe it would significantly impact the light.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Finish your thought.
The light and the air between neighboring houses. There are already mosquito issues in the area due to the other permanent shadow zones. We believe they'll be exacerbated by a 3-story structure with the combination of the height and the limited setbacks. And we just wanted to mention that in the county's own words, quote, "The purpose of setback requirements is to provide light and air between one-family detached dwellings, which is an important purpose of zoning regulation." And with that, thank you for your time.
Thank you. There was a request, and I presume that Jessica and Ann Duffy have discussed this. I'm going to call Ann Duffy next, and then Jessica Patron, pursuant to Ms. Duffy's request. Please give your address and state your name for the record. Welcome.
Sure. Ann Duffy, 926 North Edgewood Street. Thank you for your accommodation.
Thank you. No problem. Go ahead.
Okay. Citing drainage concerns. So 2 of the neighboring homes, which are 933 and 927 Edgewood Street, have significant backyard drainage issues already during heavy rains. And this proposed structure sits in the direction in which the water can flow. As such, the structure has the potential to trap and or block additional water flow out of the neighborhood area. The applicant has proposed mitigation measures for stormwater as a result of the increase to the water impervious areas on the property due to the proposed structure. However, these measures consist of 4 planter boxes and were designed to account only for the rainwater coming from the roof of the structure and not from neighboring yards or sidewalks or street. These stormwater measures are likely not enough to mitigate the effects of placing a structure of this size in this location. While the applicant has said he will consult with an engineer on this issue, we haven't seen any results or any documentation of that consultation, if it happened. Regarding reduced setback dimensions, the proposed setback dimensions reduce the space between the property line to barely more than 2 feet on one side of the new structure and around 3 feet on the other side. This is barely enough space to move a lawnmower. So allowing such small setbacks would actually create a new and, in fact, negative precedent for this neighborhood. With regard to parking issues, the proposed new structure does include a 2-space parking pad. However, the proposal eliminates the existing 2-space driveway for the house that you see here, located at 937. So this proposal is showing us it actually exacerbates the parking issue. While the applicant has said he will add new parking for the existing house, he, again, has not documented any, showed any documentation in his plans, nor have we seen any documentation of that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Jessica Patron. Welcome. Thank you for your accommodation of Ms. Duffy.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for all of your attention to this matter. I know you've heard a lot about this house, but we're all very motivated. We wanted to share a few more of our concerns with you. In particular, the developer previously mentioned some of the takeaways from the meeting that we had in September.
Just give us your name and
Oh, I'm sorry,
address.
Jessica Patron, 934 North Daniel Street.
Continue.
Yes. So at the September meeting, the BZA members raised several questions and asked that the applicant come back with some additional information and perhaps staff would do some additional investigation. The applicant briefly mentioned these items now and produced in his hand some documentation, but that's nothing that we've seen in the last 2.5 months. And I'll just quickly flag through them. Additional details on the beneficial owner of the trust, a determination from Arlington or from the Arlington Attorney General as to the buildability of Lot 171, the health of the oak tree, reducing the structure from 3 stories to 2 stories, and engagement with the neighbors. Now, on the latter point, as a neighbor, we're particularly motivated on this point, but the Lion Park Citizens Association also was deeply concerned about the lack of engagement and the precedent that this would set, that when the applicant says, nothing I could do would please the neighbors, we felt personally slighted because we came to him in earnest with a list of questions, requests for additional information, and suggestions for how to mitigate some of these issues, like the window wells, the setbacks on each side, particularly the 2-foot side. And the applicant clearly did not intend to engage in any meaningful way, and the Citizens Association was particularly discouraged because future developers could come in and just simply state that the neighbors would never be satisfied, so there would be no need to engage. In addition, as has been previously mentioned, the applicant has plans that are moving through the county process for the existing structure on 937. We have seen no documentation of that. We have no confirmation of what that structure would do with respect to height, additional light and air between the structures, and parking in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Was that the conclusion?
That was my conclusion. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Next, Clayton Swope, and he'll be bringing up the rear will be Aaron Niesenson. Please give your name and address for the record, Mr. Swope.
I'm Clayton Swope. I'm at 927 North Edgewood Street.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Briefly, I just wanted to go over the consultations and the engagement that the applicant has had with us as the neighbors. Right after the BZA met in September, we decided to coordinate it, and I reached out for us to set up a meeting. That was within a week of the BZA in September meeting. The earliest that the applicant could meet was October 29th, so it was significantly later. It was more than a month after our initial attempt to discuss with him some of our concerns. On the day of that meeting, the applicant canceled the meeting. We weren't able actually to meet until November 5th, which is last week. At that point, the materials were already online, and the proposal was finalized, and it appeared to be the same one that we saw in September. And it wasn't clear what, if any, changes could be made at that point. So I just, this whole process, it seemed, and the applicant did say this himself, that he viewed the engagement as trying to convince us that his proposal as is was the right proposal, and not as taking into account our concerns and seeing if there's a way that the proposal could be changed. I think the example of the height questions that we had and that were raised by some of my neighbors here now were good ones. The applicant says they weren't feasible. It wasn't that they weren't feasible, it's that they weren't cost effective for him, that they would add cost to the proposal. There seems to be just generally a clear divergence between what the county would expect, robust engagement with the neighbors, with the community association, and then what happened here. We just noticed the Lion Park Citizens Association letter. Really, a lot of their concerns echo our concerns, specifically the establishing precedent without adequate consultations for building on these 25-foot wide lots. These homes last about 100 years. The home that I live in is 100 years old. Whatever is built now will probably last 100 years. We just hope that the BZA will take into account both the earnest attempts we have made, including me sending an email yesterday to ask for an update, which went unreplied, and then with what the engagement the developer has had, which in effect is trying to convince us that his proposal is right as is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swope. Lastly, Aaron Niesenson.
Yeah, hi,
Name
Aaron
and address for
Niesenson.
the record. Thank you.
Aaron Nissenson, 931 North Edgewood Street.
Welcome.
As I spoke here last time, this is really a new proposal because the other use permits that were granted involved existing properties and existing RPCs. They were not splitting off a side lot, or they entailed very extenuating circumstances. The county here has said, this is not a unique lot. This could be replicated 20 times on one block and replicate that through the rest of Moore's Addition. Not only that, about a third of the county is made up of 25-foot lots. There are little additions, there are these pre-plotted plans all over the county. So that would apply across the county. And so if you say today that you can split your existing lot into 25-foot lots, that applies to rest of Moore's Addition and a large part of the county. That is clearly contrary to the zoning code. The zoning code for R5 has 45-foot width lots. To allow 25-foot width lots would almost double the amount of density allowed by the zoning code. And one of the core features of the zoning code is density and how many properties can be in the specific area. which also pushes then onto the parking, onto the public infrastructure and the like. It would also totally defeat the first purpose of the setbacks, which is to provide air and light in between the properties. Now, we can understand that there's a desire for more housing and affordable housing, and we're very sympathetic to that. And there's a lot of planning going on around that process. There's the Housing Arlington, there's the Affordable Housing Master Plan, all of which are ongoing. And those are an appropriate way to address affordable housing and looking at more density. Doing it on an ad hoc way and making a precedent that could be applied throughout the county is a huge step to take without having the community input, community involvement, the Arlington way that we have around planning. And so we would ask that you deny this request. There's nothing unique about this property, and granting it would be contrary to the zoning code and violate a number of the other conditions that you have. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Question?
To engage him?
Go ahead, please.
If
Ms.
you-
Malice would like to ask you a question.
If you wouldn't mind, I'd like to engage you on a couple of the issues that have come up. And the one that you just mentioned was that we would be setting a precedent by allowing the county to split lots in contravention to the zoning ordinance. What we've heard from staff is that what they're recommending, in fact, conforms to current zoning. So that's what we're trying to figure out. Do you disagree with staff's interpretation that they could, anyone could build by right here?
I don't know that they could build by right, but you have no obligation to grant any use permit or waiver of any conditions. And they can only practically do it if you do so. Now, once you start doing so, you really can't stop. In other words, like the reason they have to get the use permit first is because they really can't build without it.
Yeah. So, the speaker's making the argument that it's precedential and that it contravenes current zoning.
So I should specify here that this does not conform to the current standards of the zoning ordinance.
Right.
But there is a specific allowance for certain lots created before July 15th, 1950, the original adoption of the zoning ordinance, to still be buildable. However, the neighbor has brought a point that allowance says that they have the right to any use that's allowed in that zoning district, but the by right envelope is, in that case, only a few feet wide. So while they may have the ability, they may not have a practical way to do that.
In this case, how many feet wide?
7 feet wide.
They could build 7 feet wide by right.
Yes.
Okay.
They have 8 and 10 feet, 18 off of 25,
Okay.
7, and 35 feet tall.
And 35 feet tall. And if I'm not mistaken, we've seen houses like that.
Not quite that.
Pershing, was the one on Pershing.
I haven't seen anything less than 11 or 12
Barton
feet.
is 11.
I mean Barton, that's what I meant.
That's
Barton,
11 feet.
Barton
That's
at
the Mickey
that's
Simpson
11.
house.
So this would be at 7.
Correct.
Okay. The
And Mickey built that by right.
Yes.
Because we denied his application. At that point, it was for a variance. And he built the house. And I don't know what the latest sale price was, but I think he did okay eventually. He lived in it for a while.
Now, the other point on setbacks is that if we accepted the applicant's proposal, the setbacks would in fact be the same type of setback, the same that we have approved for other houses in this neighborhood.
The requested setbacks do have some comparable examples that staff
Right.
has listed.
So the air and light issue is not dissimilar to other air and light issues that we've seen in this neighborhood.
To Mr. Owen's earlier question, the exceptions that have been granted weren't necessarily for structures as tall as are currently proposed.
I completely understand that, but the setbacks themselves, but But somebody could build a house taller. You know, let's say it's the normal size lot. That house could be taller
Yes.
with narrower with setbacks that we have made constrained exceptions for, right? I mean, so the light and air issue is not something that's necessarily specific to this application.
Or unique to this application.
Unique to this application.
I mean, even by right, if they build a 7-foot wide, 35-foot structure, it's going to block light on either side of it at different parts of the day considerably,
Right.
Just by virtue of its height. But that would be by right.
Correct.
And I think you maybe have granted exceptions where somebody bought a small piece of property, but this is a person who's seeking to essentially divide a property that they have already built a house on and is buildable in and of itself. And so it's not a situation where you have somebody who has a claim that I can't get any value out of my property because they already have value in their property. And some of these other instances are they might have these lone lots, or they might have lots that are right next to an apartment building. And there might be some rational reasons to have that type of house. What does not make a lot of sense is saying that any residential lot, because there's nothing unique about this lot, that any residential lot could end up with one of these houses, which is essentially what the applicant and the county is saying.
Thank you for
Yes.
hanging.
Thank you,
We
Mr.
may have more
Nissenson.
questions, but.
Any other questions from the board of staff or the applicant? Or
I have a question.
Go
for
ahead,
staff.
Ms. Malice.
The question on drainage that was raised, these plans reflect any changes to drainage?
We don't have any changes to the drainage infrastructure from September.
Okay.
Let me follow up on that, Ms. Malice. But the Department of Public Works would have to approve anytime the soil is being broken, they're going to have to sign off on essentially the drainage plan.
Any permit that disturbs more than, I believe it's 2,500 square feet of area has to receive a land disturbance activity permit, in which they will be checking for stormwater.
Right. So as a part of the building process, they necessarily have to provide a plan that engineers in the county deem acceptable.
And one other question for staff. On the parking issue, this has a parking requirement that's customary?
Yes. Any new house is required to provide the requisite off-street parking spaces.
The requisite off-street parking spaces. So there's no new space created?
Yes, there would.
Oh, I'm sorry, requisite off-space, yes. So that's 2 spaces.
For the R5 zoning district, yes.
Okay.
But if I may, the adjacent home.
Mr.
Oh,
the
sorry,
applicant
Mr. Jocelyn, the applicant. If I may, the adjacent home, since we are removing parking spaces from the adjacent home, it does necessitate 2 parking spaces in the existing structure. Now, that's not included in this hearing, but that's necessitated, and that's going to be done.
So there's 4 spaces between the 2 dwellings?
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Melnick,
I'd like to make a motion.
have we concluded discussion? Mr. Rissy?
Should the applicant be given an opportunity for rebuttal after the other speakers?
The applicant has come to the podium and do you have anything more to add?
Well, I would want to comment, and these are things for the record, only because the record is very important to me. I'm a member of this community. In no way did I meet with the neighbors and explain that it was my way or the highway. There are professionals involved in this, and I'm a professional, and I'm somewhat offended by the comment. I want to put that in the record. And by right, a 7-foot skinny house, which has been proposed, designed, not engineered yet, I won't build. It's ugly, it's distasteful, but it's actually been done before. It would be in the record books. It would be a architectural marvel. I live here. That's not that will not be my legacy. And I don't want myself or any other developer to be pushed in that direction. I think that's unfair. And again, I'll say it again very clearly. We're asking to develop a small lot within walking distance to a metro station in an area that is desperately in need of affordable housing, asking for previously, nothing I'm asking for has not been granted before. And I want to make that very clear, and nothing's egregious. I haven't put the largest structure on there by design. And part of the tree preservation, we can't preserve the tree, is actually detrimental to me. And the house was designed to preserve the tree. At any rate, those are my only further comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Mr. Melnick.
Okay. So just after hearing everything we've heard, including the comments, taking everything into account, I'm still persuaded by the staff report, and the fact of conformity, just with the neighboring properties. So I'd like to make a motion that the Board of Zoning Appeals accept this, approve this application in case V1149319 UP1.
Thank you very much, Mr. Melnick. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Freshman. It's been moved by Mr. Melnick and seconded by Ms. Freshman to approve the application as submitted. Ms. Freshman.
So I seconded the motion, and I intend to vote for it. But I have to say that as someone who lives in Amazonia and has seen what's happened to rents, including mine, and housing prices in my neighborhood, I think the housing crisis in Arlington is severe and is only going to get worse despite Housing Arlington and other group efforts. Bureaucracies take forever to address problems and don't always come up with ideal solutions. I'm not terribly optimistic about that effort. But one of the things I've learned just from my immediate neighbors is that people can be very sympathetic to the needs of starter homes, the needs for renters, except where they live. And more, what we're seeing is that there are suggestions for what negatively is considered upzoning, but basically are some relaxations in the R districts from R5 up. And the farther you go with larger lots, the more resistance there is to sharing. It's an intractable problem. I have a lot of issues with this particular application, which I expressed before. It may not reach the height limit, but because of its size and the fact that you can't have more than 4 unrelated adults renting your property, there's no reason for you to have 6 bedrooms. You can rename them, I suppose, but it's still a duck. But I think in general, there are going to be properties in this neighborhood and elsewhere in Arlington where similar situations exist, or where somebody comes in and tears down a nice 100-year-old home because they can legally build 2 McMansions or small McMansions, and the neighbors don't like it, but that's what they can do. So I think that this is a cautionary tale for the whole county. I would certainly design something differently, but I would not say that because it may not look like the rest of the neighborhood, nothing can be there.
Thank you, Ms. Freshman. I'm going to say for the record, I'm just going to read briefly from the Civic Association's letter, which I think is really important. And while it said they are not for any exceptions to the zoning ordinance, I think one of the most important things to me is that it says, in addition, the Lion Park Civic Association would like to request that for substantial, non-routine zoning appeals, such as this one, that the county staff and the BZA require clear communication with both the local civic association and affected neighbors in advance of a staff recommendation or scheduling a board hearing. I would have liked to have seen a representative of the Lion Park Civic Association be engaged in this, Dr. Johnson, in a really substantial way, because I too am concerned, as they say, with this becoming precedent-setting and others with less altruistic motives than yourself coming with just a pure profit motive and attempting to build to the limit. And 7 feet, I was a part of some 15, 20 years ago almost, a zoning case which resulted in an 11-foot wide house. We denied that application, and I saw what was built, and it was used. It has been used and is, I think, promoted some more development in that area on Barton Street. I would like to see more of these lots utilized, but in a way that's not so offensive to the neighbors who have long-standing interests in their neighborhood. So I'd like to see builders be involved with the community, to be responsive to their needs. And that doesn't mean accommodating their needs, but being responsive to them. That means discussing in detail and providing the justification for why positions are being taken. And I know we've heard multiple times developers have it said by citizens that the developer said it's my way or the highway, or I'm gonna, I'll do something else more offensive. We often warn neighbors that the by right option could be worse than your acceding to some of the developers' desires. I too am going to support this, not because I think it's an ideal plan, but because I think that that there can be innovative approaches to small lots that don't necessarily put the builder in the tiny house category and promote record-setting tiny house development. But I think Arlington is, and especially Lion Park, is uniquely situated to accommodate some diverse development on these small lots. But I think that development benefits greatly by engagement and thoughtful designs. So,
Mr.
any
Chairman?
further, Ms. Malice?
I guess I'm taking a contrary view on this. In the Lion Park Citizen Association, they made the letters opposed ignoring zoning ordinance and creating a new standard without neighborhood input and county board approval. I don't agree with that statement per se. I do believe that what is being proposed is in accordance with zoning as staff has described it. My issue here is compatibility, and that is one of the criteria that we use to determine whether any deviation from the zoning ordinance is appropriate. It's a judgment that we're asked to make. It's my judgment that it's not compatible, not because of the setbacks. The setbacks are similar, but I think the height troubles me. That this resulting structure would not blend into the neighborhood, and that obviously zoning. The BZA also takes in consideration community comment, and we do that so that the community's eyes on the ground and can come and tell us compatibility better than those of us that don't live in your neighborhood. So my issue is that while it may be appropriate to do this on other sites like this one, that this particular structure is not compatible.
Thank you, Ms. Malice. Mr. Melick?
Yeah, I wanted to clarify that my motion includes including the conditions as stated in the staff report.
Mr. Chairman?
Any further discussion? Mr. Owen?
Yes, I think this is a difficult case. I wasn't sure as late as a couple days ago, how I felt about it. This particular site is, as we talked about last time, there's other houses in the neighborhood that are tall, skinny houses. Not on this block, but in this neighborhood. This block is closer to the city center, the metro station, the Clarendon. It's actually across the street from a dentist's office.
Mm-hmm.
But what's interesting about it is that the dentist office is fairly new construction. And they constructed that dentist office to have the appearance of a single-family detached home that's not a skinny house, right? Because, well, I don't know what their motivations were, but perhaps their motivation was that they thought that was appropriate to be compatible with what was around them. So now we're going to have the irony potentially of this unusual for its block skinny house across the street from a commercial building or a professional building that is made to look like a single-family home, and that seems a little bit backwards to me. That's not reason in it of itself, to vote one way or the other, but to me, it's illustrative of how this is challenging. Like, you would think that I personally live in a townhome, right? My townhome is across the street from a condo building, and the townhomes are meant to be the buffer between the condo building and single-family homes that are farther back away from the metro station. So if I were on the county board, which I am not, I might think, well, maybe we should restripe this block to allow for townhomes or to allow for tall, skinny homes or whatever, because this would be an appropriate buffer zone. But I'm troubled that the county board is not doing this and that the BZA would be seen to be doing it. Granted, not through, in my questions earlier, I clarified with staff, and Ms. Malice has clarified this point as well, we're not literally doing that as a matter of law. But as Mr. Neeson suggested, we are perhaps doing it as a matter of practice. And so, in a way, a rough summary of a guiding principle that I think relates to compatibility, which is our legal standard, is if someone walks by this after it's built and says, well, who the heck approved that? Who the heck approved that? If somebody just walking by, an ordinary citizen, would look upon it and think, I wonder what the zoning is here, right? Then I feel like perhaps we haven't done our job in deciding compatibility. And that's my view. I think relations between a proposed builder and you're not a professional builder, you're a doctor, and you've done a fairly thorough job in working with your other professionals to prepare a very thorough application. But even, builders and neighbors, it's tough, right? Especially if people aren't practiced at it. And I hope that feelings aren't too raw as a result of this exchange. But those are tough. And I think that I'm also troubled by, if in the end we approve something that's not quite reasonable, that may further discourage neighbors from in the future engaging in this kind of way, in a constructive way as opposed to a destructive way. I don't feel like the neighbors got anything out of their participation this time, and I think that's pretty disappointing. As you said, not even explanations, right? And so if we just approve anyway, then what incentives are we creating for future neighbor dialogues? That's troubling to me as well. Again, not a reason in and of itself for denial. I think the main reason why I would deny is because I don't think that the applicant has met the burden of production or persuasion that this would not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to property or improvements in the neighborhood. And I think with respect to the combination of height and setback, I don't think that we would approve on a standard lot in R5 construction on a brand new conforming lot that had an aggregate setback of 11 feet. I don't think we would do that to a 31-foot height to both edges, flat roofed. I think we would look at that and say that's too big. And so this is skinnier because it's a skinnier lot, but I don't think that those setbacks are comparable, or the setbacks provided by the staff are comparable. So for those reasons, I'll vote against the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Owen. Any further discussion of the motion? Motion's been duly made by Mr. Melnick and seconded by Ms. Freshman to approve the subject use permit. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
So by 3-2, the motion is granted, and the development can move forward. Thank you all very much. And just in closing, I want to say, with respect to neighborhood involvement, it was substantial. It was heard, and I think Mr. Owen alluded to perhaps the need to go to the county board to more broadly address your issues with respect to Lyon Park and the development of these small lots in your neighborhood. It's something they may want to take a more active role in looking at, because it isn't our job to rezone, and these are, as Mr. Owen said, very difficult cases. So, having said that, I'd ask Mr. Rissy to please call the next case.
Case number V-11497-19-UP-1 is a use permit request by Larry and Catherine Chatu, the owners, to permit a right side setback of 8.5 feet instead of 8 feet as required from the side property line, and to permit a rear setback of 18 feet to the wall of an addition, 17 feet to the eave, and 20 feet to the fireplace instead of 25 feet to the addition, wall, and fireplace, 21 feet to the eave as required from the rear property line, and to permit an aggregate setback of 17.4 feet instead of 18 feet as required in the R6 zoning district regarding a 2-story rear addition and 1-story side addition in the R6 zoning district on the premise known as 886 North Jefferson Street. Staff recommends the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rissy.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Owen,
question for staff.
go ahead, please.
On page 3 of the staff report, in the rear setback distance comparison chart, there's an address listed for 5514 to 5519 9th Road North. Does that structure, if it is a structure, single structure, does that appear on the map that's provided by staff in the packet? What is that 5514 to 5519 9th Road North?
There's a typo there. It should be 5513 5519 9th Road North, which are two adjacent properties that received, I guess, one variance back in 1972 at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're 8 feet from a trail or from a street?
Interstate
from a street right
66.
Okay, but not
which
from another house.
is in zoning. An interstate road is
Treated like a house.
treated like an adjacent property line, not a right-of-way.
Yep, okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any more questions of Mr. Rissy? Hearing none. Larry and/or Catherine Chatu, I know their representative has put forward a speaker slip, Ms. Riddle Moser, who graces us again. Welcome. I presume that's Mr. Chatu with you.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hi, glad to be back.
I beg your pardon?
Glad to be back.
Okay, welcome. Do you have anything to add? Any comments to make?
I mean, no, other than, we've got kids in middle school, and we just want to make the property nice so they can have their friends over. That's it.
And you are Larry Chatu?
Yes, sir.
886 North Jefferson Street. Okay. Ms. Riddle Moser has signed a speaker slip. Anything that you want to add, Ms. Riddle Moser?
No, just here to answer any questions. I understand last month there may have been some dimensional questions about the plat, so here to answer anything.
There were some questions from the last hearing. Did you provide let's see here.
Yes, an existing plat has been added to the package.
New plats.
Yes, and yeah.
Oh, this was the one with the issues about the legibility of the understanding what some of the dimensions were, because the house is situated askew on the lot. And that, I think that 8.5-foot distance, 7.5 to the rear eave was one of the questions on the right side. And that rear, what the measurement for the rear, the existing deck.
So this one has a side setback relief that the previous application did not have.
And, okay. Is that 8.5 instead of 10? Okay.
And now you can see on the revised plat all the various rear distances.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Any questions of the applicant and/or the applicant's representative?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Owen.
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Let's hear it.
Mr. Chairman, let's see. I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the attached proposed resolution approving use permit V-11497-19-UP-1, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Owen. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Seconded by Ms. Malice. Mr. Owen.
I'll just say this was an easy application once our questions were answered.
Yeah.
And because this was previously associated with a variance, we couldn't ask any questions until we came to the meeting, and so that delayed the applicant by a month. And that's too bad, but now you're approved, and just wanted to note that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Owen. Yes. But it's important for the record to have a report that's clear, and especially plats. So
I'm sorry, I was premature. It was pointed out to me that we haven't voted yet. So
I know.
You only have 2 votes so far. We'll see if you get a third.
Moved by Mr. Owen, seconded by Ms. Malice to approve the subject use permit with the conditions described in the staff report. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. The matter is granted. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please call the next case.
Case number V-11504-19-UP-1 is a use permit request by Alan Crawley and Stephanie Hamill, the owners, to permit a right side setback of 8 feet to the wall from the right side property line instead of 11 feet to the wall as required, regarding the addition of a one-story sunroom to a semi-detached dwelling in the R27 zoning district on the property known as 2025 South Oakland Street. Staff recommends the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions. And I'd like you to please note there is supplemental material for this case that came in after the application packet was assembled and printed. We have 2 additional letters, one supplied by the applicant in favor and one from a neighbor raising some concerns of stormwater.
Thank you very much. Questions of Mr. Rissy? Okay.
2023 is the house right next door under the little red symbol.
It is the house sharing the party wall.
Would that be Elsa Leon's house?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Let's hear from the applicant and Alan Crawley and/or Stephanie Hamill. Welcome. You must be Mr. Crawley.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And
give your name and address.
I'm Alan Thomas Crawley from 2025 South Oakland Street.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for hearing me.
Let me ask you before you make any comments, Elsa Leon, the neighbor who's the attached property, have you spoken with her about her concerns about drain spouts?
No, sir, not directly. We spoke about the project, but there was no mention of drain spouts.
She sent a letter. You probably haven't seen this yet, have you? You might want to take a copy. Mr. Rissy has that for you, and read it real quickly. We'll give you just a moment to take a look at that. and I presume this is your builder, Donald Karmazik. Welcome. You can come forward, Mr. Karmazik. We have a speaker slip for you. And I'll ask you to look at that letter too, especially the third paragraph. I'd like to request that a condition that, starting with that one.
Yeah, we have no objection to that, to put the.
So that's not a problem?
No, that's
in
not a
terms of
problem at all.
construction? That is, she wants to ensure that downspouts will not drain to the left side of the property.
To the opposite side of her home, yeah, so it's really,
Okay.
yeah, that's not a problem.
Thank you very much.
And I guess I'd like
Now,
to add.
you can make now that's been addressed. Please make a statement or any
Okay.
comments on your project that you'd like. I appreciate it.
Well,
Thank
right off, I'd like to say that I try to collect most of the water that comes off of our roof and rain barrels for my garden. So that's a consideration. But really, we just wanted to go forward with this project because we need a little more room. And it doesn't look like it's too different from other additions we've seen in places throughout the neighborhood. I think they're usually considered mud rooms. So maybe it's a little different in the use, but the size is very similar to other constructions we've seen.
Yep. Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Owen.
Did you attempt to have any conversations with the property owner directly to the rear of your property at
yeah.
2020 Nelson Street?
We just did last night. My wife went over and spoke with them, and we were able to get a letter of support from them.
2020?
2022, South Nelson.
But 2022 is one of your rear neighbors, but the one most directly behind you is 2020.
To my understanding, that's unoccupied right now. It looked like it was for rent when I went by there last time.
Uh-huh. Have you attempted to reach out to the owner of the property?
No, sir, I didn't.
Did you get a copy of a double-sided notice from the board that talked about neighbor outreach, that had a map of what constitutes abutting properties?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay.
I apologize. I noticed the house was under some renovations, and then I noticed a sign up in the front yard.
Yeah.
So when I went to speak with them, the vacant house, I assumed my business was concluded when it was.
Okay. Thank you. That's helpful feedback. That notice actually specifically discusses the situation where a house is not owner occupied and provides a web link where you can look up the name of the record owner. And so we're new at promulgating this form, and so this is one of our first pieces of input about how well that's working and whether or not we need to redesign the messages we give.
Sure.
Because that's really not our expectation. Our expectation is that when a house is not owner occupied, that applicants will reach out to the record owner for all adjacent properties, and we provided a specific method to make it easy to do so. And so
I understand.
we're curious about why that wouldn't work.
So what I saw was on your website the how-to guide with but I don't recall receiving specifically the two-sided sheet that you're speaking of. But
Oh yeah, okay. So then let me ask that question again. So do you remember receiving on paper a piece of paper that said at the top it had our letterhead, the Board of Zoning Appeals letterhead, and then on one side of it it would have a map that shows a schematic that shows what we mean by adjacent properties? Was this submitted before that came?
The final filing deadline for the November hearing was the same day that you actually approved
Okay.
Version 1?
version 1.
Yeah.
So he did not have the benefit
So
of
he didn't actually get that one.
at submittal.
All right, so you're in the clear. Never again. Yours was the problem we were trying to solve, and maybe we did. So thanks.
But that's good feedback, though, nevertheless. I like to hear how folk attempt to make contact with neighbors and what their reaction is, because your reaction is common. It's not out of the ordinary. So
why we made a new form.
Yeah, why we're trying to, we're trying to result. Many owners actually don't live in the area,
Sure.
and they often are difficult to reach. But trying to make contact with them, sending something, getting a not deliverable as addressed, or something in reply would be helpful. Anyway, thank you, Mr. Owen, for that. Any other questions, the applicant or the representative? And if not, I'd be happy to take a motion.
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Malice.
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the attached proposed resolution approving use permit V-11504-19-UP-1, subject to the conditions listed.
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Ms. Malice, seconded by Mr. Melnick to approve the subject use permit with the conditions in the staff report. Any further discussion of the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The matter is granted. Thank you very much. Good luck. Please call the next case, Mr. Rissy.
Case number V-11505-19-UP-1 is a use permit request by Brian Carmone and Lisa Cole, the owners, to permit a right side setback of 3.4 feet to the wall, 3 feet to the porch, 2 feet to the porch eave, instead of 8 feet to the wall and porch, 5 feet to the porch eave as required from the right side property line, and to permit an aggregate setback of 13 feet instead of 18 feet as required in the R6 zoning district regarding a carport enclosure and new side porch in the R6 zoning district on the premise known as 515 North Montague Street. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Thank you very much. Questions of Mr. Rissy? Hearing none. Brian Carome and or Lisa Cole. Welcome. Do you have anything to add? I note you do have an agent who has registered to speak. Mr. Cook.
Hello.
Anything to add to the staff report?
No, we're trying to turn our carport into more living space for our big family.
Thank you very much. Any, and your agent, Mr. Tom Cook? Anything to add?
Not much. I'm just here for support or any questions.
Thank you very much. Well, we'll see if there are any. Any questions of the applicant or their representative? Hearing none, I'd be happy to take a motion then.
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Malice.
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the attached proposed resolution approving use permit V-11505-UP-1, subject to the conditions listed.
Thank you very much. Seconded by Ms. Freshman. Any further discussion of the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The matter is granted. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Owen.
Before we call the next item, I just want to disclose that I have an acquaintance with the applicant, but I would be able to overcome any biases to decide the case fairly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Owen. Ms. Malice?
I am acquainted with the applicant, but I believe I can hear the case fairly.
And let me join that. I, too, know the applicant, and I, too, can make a unbiased representation. I mean, as noted by the applicant's application, they've been active in the community for a long time, and there are many of us who've been so inclined, so you bump into each other, but that doesn't mean that you're unable to make a unbiased decision. So, Mr. Rissy, please call the next case.
Case number V-11506-19-VA-1 is a variance request by Gabrielle and Dolores Rubacalaba. The owners permit a total lot coverage of 45.73% instead of 43% as required for a one-family dwelling with a qualifying front porch and no detached rear garage in the R6 zoning district regarding a new rear single-story over-basement addition in the R6 zoning district on the premise known as 818 North Frederick Street. Staff recommends that the board adopt the proposed resolution denying the variance. A proposed alternative resolution has been provided should the BZA see fit to approve the variance as advertised. And I'd like you to please note there is supplemental material that came in for this and the associated next case after the application packets were assembled and printed. It is a letter from one of the adjacent neighbors at 812 North Frederick Street.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rissy. Ms. Freshman?
So the issue here is coverage?
Yes.
Right? And I'm looking at the plat that shows the new addition. and it seems to what am I trying to say? It seems to not to be in line with the left side, but to protrude out to the farther to the south. And I'm wondering if the addition was smaller, that is to say, in line with the house, if that would solve the coverage problem, or would it still be over?
I do not believe that reduction alone would bring it into conformity with the requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Okay. Dolores and/or Gabriel Rubaclava, welcome. You've had a chance to see the staff report?
Yes, sir, I have.
Okay.
Good evening.
Welcome.
My name is Gabe Rubacava. I'm at 818 North Frederick Street. Good evening. Tonight I want to discuss my request for you to approve the variance of 45.73% versus the ordinance requirement of 43%. I understand that this is the position of staff on the subject, but feel that it is a too strict reading of the ordinance without regard to extenuating circumstances of the case. I would like you to consider three things in order to approve our request. First of all, there are 2 homes in my neighborhood that have been approved for over 55%, and I would request equal treatment. I understand that there may be extenuating circumstances, but I'm only asking for 45%, which is under the 48% that would be allowed if I had a separate garage. Secondly, I want to review the what of the circumstances. Essentially, the only reason that the percentages are off is because I built a driveway that extends further than what staff deems necessary. Upon review of the staff response by my 2 civil engineers, my son-in-law and daughter, I could build without a variance if I destroyed part of the current parking pad to effectively bring us into compliance at 43%. I would sincerely ask that I not be forced to do that. The reason that the driveway was built, and it was built last year, is that we are bordered on 3 sides by 4 different businesses. These businesses have extended hours that do not have enforcement by parking regulation, and in particular, the business in front of my house is a gym. We did not have an issue with the size of the original driveway until last year in January. As you may understand, in January, that begins a season where we have to seek parking elsewhere in the neighborhood. January begins a season where people start working out for the summer body. At times, we could not park in front of our house and had to seek parking elsewhere in the neighborhood to park our cars. At the time, the driveway could only accommodate 1 car or 2 if I chose to park on the grass, which I'd prefer not to do. In addition, we have 5 cars, me, my wife, and 3 daughters. I'm blessed to have 3 daughters at home. And Arlington only allows for 3 cars with a temp pass for a 4th car. Since I was the odd man out, my daughters and wife got the passes, and we got ticketed multiple times at $50 a pop for parking in front of my house. And guess who paid? So the parking pad was built. No more tickets, and we can park at our house. Please do not put us in a position where we have to scramble again for parking. Lastly, I want to review the why of the request. I am a disabled veteran. I'm a diabetic, and I have 3 injectors with which I inject myself at least 36 times per week to survive. And while I stated that I was in relatively good health, I was reminded by my family that I was not. And this last Friday brought that home to me. On Friday, I had laser treatment of my eyes to stop the bleeding resulting from diabetes. One offset of that is that my night vision is much less than normal. That night, I got up, as old men are wont to do, and fell. It is a long story why. Suffice it to say that it was Dad 0, Dog 1. I fell on my knees and shoulder and now have significant issues climbing the stairs. That fall, in addition to my breaking of a toe 3 weeks ago, point the need for me to have a bottom floor bedroom now and not in the future. As I did state, age has got me. With 4 hip surgeries and 1 knee surgery, I need to minimize my need to climb stairs. Why then did I state that I was in fairly good health? Not because, as my wife said, I'm a stubborn old pain in the backside, but because in my generation, we sucked it up and kept moving. That's what we were called on to do, and we did. But as Friday taught me, I have to get over that. So I ask you to approve the variance. Let me not get any more tickets, and let me live on a bottom floor. I will not fall as far. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions of Mr. Rubaclava?
Yes. Have you looked at what it would take to bring your new addition into compliance? In other words, what size it would need to be?
Yes. The reason that it was designed as such, basically for me to have a wheelchair later on in life. So the kitchen is larger, and the bedroom, in order to be in compliance, would end up being like a 9 by 10, and I can't live in a 9 by 10. Okay, so the only other option, as presented and discussed, is to cut the parking so that the footprint of the entire house would be within the 43%. I'd ask you not to do that, not to require me to do that. The next door neighbor has at least once a month wine and cheese parties, which are free, and which fills up that parking lot and also the street. And in addition, the gym is a gym. It has people coming to and from at all hours of the day and night. So I feel it would be a significant issue for us to tear down that portion. But if that is required, I mean, we'll do it, but I'd rather not.
Mr. Chairman, the standard that we use, the legal standard that we use for approving a variance, has to do with basically economic viability of your property. You know, we're sort of going into an area in terms of your medical issues that are beyond economic viability and go into another area that I'm not sure we're prepared to deal with tonight. It seems that, whether you reduce the size of your addition or reduce the size of your parking pad would be up to you in terms of which you would prefer to come into compliance.
I prefer not to do either. However, we're talking about 2%.
No, we understand.
Mr. Chair. So, yeah, I heard what you were saying about medical problems too, and I don't know if the applicant would want to defer to see if this could be put under the rubric of disability.
Had you, Mr. Melnick is referring to one of the possible conditions that could help you in presenting your case is if you could present evidence of a disability, as that term is used under the Americans with Disability Act. That would be medical evidence that would describe the necessity for an accommodation from the zoning ordinance as it stands to allow for some modification based on this disability that needs to be accommodated. We don't have, what Mr. Malik is saying, we don't have any evidence before us of that other than your statement. And some medical evidence would be required to, like in employment, to state you have a disability, and that would be from a doctor. Now, if you would consider some delay in this process to seek that and bring that before the board, that may help you. We can't say whether it would change anyone's minds or change staff's mind with respect to their recommendation, but it's possible. If you would allow for that time period. Obviously, you'd need some time to go to a doctor to get verification of what you say, and the doctor describing why you need to make these changes to your structure to accommodate your disability. That may be a stronger argument. A delay in this process, in other words, a deferral, you would have to agree to such a thing, or be willing to pursue that. Otherwise, tonight a decision could be made that you may not want, may not accommodate what you need right now. Not saying that with a deferral and you bringing forward that evidence would guarantee an approval, but it might be more helpful than what we have before us now.
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Malice?
Yes, just to follow up. I think you would need to take a look at the ordinance and how the disability ordinance is written, and also consult with staff, because you can make accommodations for that, but you would have to show that they are necessary, and simply having a bigger bedroom may not be sufficient to make that case that this is medically necessary.
And before, if you would consider that, that's something that we might entertain. We do have a speaker signed up, though, one of your neighbors. So I'd want to hear from him, and then we'll come back to you.
Not a problem. Let's hear it from him first.
Okay. That is Samuel Tierra, 811 North Florida Street, has signed up to speak in opposition.
Thank you.
You can have a seat, Mr. Rubalcaba. Right there in front. You don't have to go back. Yeah.
Thank you for taking the time to hear me out.
Give us your name and address.
Samuel Tierra, 811 North Florida Street. When the house was built a long time ago, they tilted the soil so that the water from the rain just rushes. Instead of a tilt and then a flat, they put the soil so it rushes down towards us, and then water accumulates in our backyard. And this is why I oppose this variance, because while we're talking about a very small 45 versus 43, you're talking about 50% of the impervious surface in the back that's going to be covered by a basement and an addition. And so where will the rainwater go? Then towards us. And so all that water, which is normally going to be absorbed, is just going to slide back. That's my opposition to building this. On the second thing, the house that they have, the driveway could park literally.
That's a photo. We'd love to have that as part of the record.
Okay, and I can give this to you.
Okay.
The driveway could accommodate 5 cars, so that if he needs additional space, he can build a second floor above the garage, above the den, or even incorporate on a temporary basis the 2-car garage that he could use as additional space. And he can still, in addition, with taking the garage as additional space, I can park 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 cars in a driveway, and that is not going to stop them from the gym, preventing them from doing, because that is the right. And so it's just a matter of the family members taking time to pull out their cars or leaving extra key. So in conjunction, I want to accommodate him being a disabled person, but not at the expense of destroying my property with all of the water rushing through and taking more than 50% of the 25-foot setback, and then just so that he can accommodate all his requests, when in fact there are alternatives in the existing house already that he could do. I'm going to give this picture.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Give it to Mr. Riss.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions of staff or the applicant?
Could I respond to the drainage statement?
Okay.
It is an item of which we have concern. We have even taken it to Arlington County, and I believe Mr. Risi has an email where the stormwater manager for Arlington County has said that he will be assisting us to solve that issue. Is that true, Mr. Risi?
I have an email chain so described.
So we are concerned about that as just as much as he is. The issue about stormwater was exacerbated by the buildup of the other properties. There was a French drain, as I understand it, put in the 1950s along the property line that ended in a drain 2 doors down. But since that time, they've built 2 garages, of which the gentleman's house is of one, right on the property line, and that messed up the French drain. So the house does not drain properly. And again, we've brought that up to Arlington County. The back neighbor has built up a asphalt driveway in a Arlington-owned alleyway, and that further exacerbates
Let me
the
ask you,
driveway.
are you talking about the one who's built it 5140? Or, I mean, 5150 North Florida on the corner?
Is that the business? I'd have to look at the...
Mr. Tierra is 811, and between him and the corner lot, there looks like there's a little alley.
Right away?
Well, the alley is gone.
Okay.
Okay, the alley is gone, and that would have provided drainage. And we've made several attempts to have Arlington County...
It's gone. What do you mean? Has it been
The
built
gentleman has built up at least 2 feet to make it a level parking place. And-
Was that the corner, the person on the corner, did they do that?
Yeah, the 5150 did that.
Your neighbor, Mr. Tierra, your neighbor did that on the corner? Okay, I just needed a yes, because what you're saying wouldn't be taken into the record. Well, did they have do you know, was that dedicated?
It's not shown as such.
I didn't, no, it's not on the map here, the tax map, so he's taken over county property and done something to it, it sounds like.
And we've told county about it on numerous occasions. And that's why the stormwater director...
Enforcement action going on with 5150. Are you aware of any such thing, Mr. Rissy?
Only from the email chain that the applicant has
Okay.
sent along.
Did that email chain, is that a part of the record?
No, I believe that
Does
came
it
in after.
include any emails from the county Department of Public Works or environmental services or any of the like?
Yes.
Okay, so they are aware
Yes.
of an issue. Okay, all right. Thank you very much. That and is it that your property slopes, Mr. Rubalclava, down in the back, and the same with the properties on Florida? Do they both slope down into?
8112 and 811 slope down into my property. And that's why my property becomes a little lake. And it does go into 818 solely because it'll...
Well, with the French drain that you spoke of, that was in the back of your property at some point, allegedly?
No, it actually was in the back of 806, right at the corner.
Okay.
And so if you go there, there's a drain. There's
Corner of Mr. Tierra's property and 806's property.
No. It's actually the corner that's at 806 and 730 and 801 and 805.
Oh, okay.
Right at the corner of the property, there's a drain. And that's a French drain that was put in to drain this. But as you see, at 812 and 811, they've built onto the property line. and that property line stopped the French drain from draining in that direction. And I believe the French drain was put in the 1950s. So, it could have been put in before that.
We don't have an overhead, do we, Ms. Banner? We don't have an overhead for that, a photograph, do we? One more. Okay. Oh, yeah, let's see here. Okay.
That's not our house.
That's not it.
No.
That's it, but there's no overhead.
We don't have a overhead. Okay. All right. All right. Any further questions or discussion?
Kick it to February.
No.
All right, Mr. Rubicon, but I don't think we have anything for you right now. Ms. Malice?
So, as I said before, we have to follow the law in terms of what we can grant. And while you make a compelling case about having personal needs for your family, those are not things that we can take into consideration. So we would have to, look for a way that you reduce coverage to be in compliance.
I just want to, can I ask Mr. Reese a question?
Mr. Reese, go ahead.
Mr. Reese, if I took down the staff, I believe, has an option of which me reducing the driveway. Is that correct?
That was one of the, two options we said for reducing coverage.
Okay, so if I said, all right, I'll take down that portion of the driveway, then would I need a variance?
No.
So therefore, how would that process work? Would it deem, I would go to and say, okay, you'd have to see evidence where I tore up the driveway to take away that portion? Is that correct?
It would need to be represented on a plat. The addition still would need the use permit, which is the next case.
Mm-hmm.
So it would still need to go to the BZA, and we would just need to show how much of the driveway that you would propose to remove to come into compliance with the coverage requirement.
So would that require me to come to the BZA once again?
It's up to the BZA if they would be willing to.
But not for coverage, not for the variance. One is a use permit, one is a variance. Consider the variance is a 15-foot basket that you have to try to dunk into. The variance is only 10 feet, so it's easier. It's less of a threshold that has to be crossed.
Mm-hmm.
I think Ms. Malice began to describe how the need for a variance is the granting of a variance requires a substantially more evidence of as I described, that there's almost a taking, that you can't utilize your property without the variance. Clearly you can. That's why the initial report of staff indicated their recommendation that it be denied because there were options that could be undertaken that would allow you to utilize the property fully without a variance. Now, the addition, it's too close to the rear, so that doesn't require a variance. That only requires a use permit. That's considerably easier. Your neighbor will still have a concern with respect to runoff, but it's not as, but your issue with respect to coverage, which requires a lot more, which really there wasn't an argument that allows you to have more coverage. But the side yard and the rear yard. Mr. Rissy?
If I may, to the applicant's point, there is a path where the BZA could deny the variance request and take up the use permit request and could approve the use permit without the variance and tweak the conditions so that you could remove enough driveway to not need the variance.
Or not have to come back. That if you agree to reduce the driveway.
I would do that. I'm just concerned. I would be very willing to come in and present medical evidence that I have a disability. That's not an issue. The issue is, now we're already 3 months into this, and now I guess we're expecting to be another 3 months, so already 6 months into the period.
But let me stop you and put a pin in that for a moment. My indication and Mr. Melnick's indication that there may be a path via a claim of disability doesn't guarantee that it would be met favorably by other members of the board. The doctor may, in fact, say, well, I don't know if you're at that stage yet, and thus not give you evidence that would be helpful. Even with helpful evidence, it doesn't mean that a variance is required.
It would be approved.
Ms. Freshman.
It seems to me that the wisest course is to defer to February. I know the applicant doesn't want to hear that, but there are too many outstanding issues. And in that time, research can be done as to whether or not the driveway removal could be accomplished, and so the need for the variance goes away. And or you could look into the disability issue and see if there is an option for you there. We can't decide any of that now. And it doesn't make sense to me to address the use permit in this kind of a vacuum. It makes more sense to me that we defer both items, and because there's not going to be a decision sooner anyway, in my view.
Thank you very much, Ms. Freshman. So that's kind of what you're faced with. It seems evident that there isn't support for a variance right now amongst the members of the BZA. What Mr. Rissy suggested, it doesn't sound like it would work right now either. In other words, relying on a commitment by you through removal of the variance application that you would reduce the size of the driveway to accommodate to eliminate the need for a variance, but still, you'd still need a use permit. I don't think we're going to accomplish that tonight based on what Ms. Freshman said. So it does sound like the best course is to allow you the opportunity to bring forward evidence, but also talk to a builder about what amount of the driveway would have to be taken off to comply with the lot coverage, and then come back with just the use permit. That would take a period of time, and then we have the holidays, so we don't meet in January for hearing cases. That's kind of an administrative meeting, and that's why she said February. It sounds like a long way, but it's really only 2 meetings away.
From what I understand, the staff has recommended approval of the use permit. Okay, so that's a separate item. Okay, so we're on the cusp of getting this approved now versus later, which is why I'm kind of tossing back and forth. And I think that we can come up with a equitable solution. And I'm looking back at them because those are my 2 engineers, okay? And they're going to tell me how much square footage I've got to do. And then they're going to present that to Mr. Risi, okay? And then we'll tag it out. I mean, we're talking about a total, Mr. Risi, of how many square feet?
I'm sorry, I don't have that offhand.
Okay, all right. Okay, we're going to wait until February.
What is the, and you can't draw up what is necessary tonight. That's trying to draw up something is really impossible right now. Yeah, a computation can be made on the back of an envelope, but to show where that would be done on the driveway is not possible. In other words, a new plat with the area clearly shown as what would be reduced by the driveway, it wouldn't be available to us tonight. That would be available to us in the future, in February, with a deferral, and that way we could act on the project.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Owen?
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Could I?
Let's, before that, Ms. Malice seems like she has something to say.
We can discuss it.
Go ahead, Ms. Malice.
Well, you know, as far as the use permit goes, the other outstanding issue is the drainage issue. And it would be helpful if you and your neighbor could meet and discuss if there's a solution, or your engineers, because if you in fact choose to reduce the size of the driveway and you still have a rear setback issue, we're required to take into consideration, you know, any drainage concerns that may cause. So if there's a drainage solution, either between staff or your engineers and the neighbors, that would be also helpful to you know, work out.
Is that going to be made a condition to be discussed in February?
Well, not necessarily a condition, but you're going through the process of disturbing the soil means you have to make provisions for drainage. Discussing what is a concern with your neighbor, those provisions may eliminate his objection to your plan. He may be helpful in describing how your plan could be done in such a way to minimize any inconvenience in terms of water, you know, with respect to him. But certainly discussing how you plan to mitigate water with your neighbor is the kind of thing that we encourage. The opposition to your plan based on water runoff is significant. That's a significant thing. It's not overlooked by the board.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Owen.
I'm prepared to make a motion for deferral. I note that Mr. Rubalcava has a right to a decision tonight if he demands one.
Yes.
So first I want to know, I think you've explained that it's likely that if decisions on either of these are demanded tonight, there'll probably be denials. But I want to know, before I begin to make motions for deferral, if Mr. Rubalcava would prefer decision tonight, which is your right to get a decision tonight, or would you agree to a deferral to February?
I believe I stated that I'd go until February about 3 minutes ago.
Thank you. Okay. So in that case, Mr. Chairman, I would ask unanimous consent of the Board of Zoning Appeals to consider V-11506-19- well, it says UP1 and UP2, but usually it's VA1 and VA2.
Well,
I'm sorry. Oh, yes, I'm sorry, I misread. V-11506-19-VA1 and V-11506-19-UP2 as a group for purposes of deferral. So that's my unanimous consent request.
Is there any opposition to grouping them for the purpose of deferral? No opposition.
Mr. Chairman, I
By
move
unanimous
that
consent.
we defer both of these items to the February BZA meeting for three purposes. One, to allow the applicant and staff to review the efficacy of reducing the driveway area to avoid need of a variance.
Make note of these. Go ahead, number two.
Number two, to discuss drainage issues with the neighbors and determine reasonable additional mitigation. And I'll come back and explain that if the motion has a second. And the third is to explore qualification for a variance based on disability.
Thank you very much, Mr. Owen.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Mr. Owen and seconded by Ms. Freshman to defer this matter to February to obtain answers to questions and as described, and to allow for discussions to ensue with the neighbor as described in the three conditions that the three rationale for the deferral.
And Mr. Chairman, I would just say with regard to drainage, what my expectation is that there will be discussions with the neighbors. The neighbors don't have a veto. They don't have a right to demand whatever they feel like, right? But the expectation is that you and your neighbors will have conversations, and then we, the Board of Zoning Appeals, will evaluate the reasonableness of whatever you propose for additional drainage mitigation. So you can make your case, they can make their case. Hopefully you come forward with some specific drainage mitigation, but it will be up to us to decide what's reasonable. It's just that you have the conversation so that both of you can be informed of everyone's views on the matter. So that's the intention.
I don't have any issue with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, I do want to add is that Arlington County, the storm management is also figured in this. So I have to make sure I get a hold of him and put that in there and get that involved. So
That makes sense.
So
Yep.
Yes. Ideally, you'd include Mr. Tierra in the discussions with Arlington County because he shares your concern in general with respect to drainage issues.
And ideally, there would be communication with all abutting neighbors.
Yes.
not a problem. In fact, I did forward the emails. I did not know about Mr. Tierra before we did this. I did forward the emails from Arlington County to my neighbors that did request, that did have some input. So,
one of your neighbors is the gym.
correct.
Have you contacted the ownership of the gym?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right.
I sent certified letters to everybody.
Okay. Did you get a response from them, Dino?
I did not get a response from them.
You might want to go across the street, knock on the door, and show them that you sent, and try to get to the owner and undertake some discussion with them. They have a lot of surface area that may be useful for your family to park on also in times when they're not, when you have a need. But in any event, we got a motion by Mr. Owen to defer both these matters. It was seconded by Ms. Freshman. Any other discussion of that? The applicant understands the purpose for the deferral and what should be obtained in the interim. Hearing no further discussion, all in favor of the motion to defer these two cases to the February 2020 meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. This matter is deferred. Thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
look forward to fruitful discussion and a resolution that will make it easier for you and the Board of Zoning Appeals to get what you would desire. Mr. Rissy, please call the, what I believe to be the next to last case on our docket.
Case number V-11507-19-UP-1 is a use permit request of Mang Tat Luz Lee and Yu Ling Yao, the owners, to permit a right-of-way setback of 17 feet to the wall and porch, 16 feet to the building and porch eaves instead of 25 feet to the wall, 21 feet to the porch, 21 feet to the building eave, and 19 feet to the porch eave as required from the North Evergreen Street right-of-way regarding a new front porch and entry foyer in the R6 zoning district on the premise known as 2321 North Evergreen Street. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rissy. Any questions of staff? Hearing none. And by the way, Mang Tat, speaker slip was not required for the applicant, but that's fine. Come forward, and do you have anything to add? You should be encouraged to know we favor porches, and as a general rule, the county does.
No, I don't have anything to add.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Owen.
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Let's hear it.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the attached proposed resolution approving use permit V-11507-19-UP1 subject to the conditions listed.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Owen and seconded by Ms. Freshman to approve the subject use permit with the conditions described in the staff report. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it, and your porch is granted. Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience in staying so long. And now, the last case. Please call it, Mr. Rissy.
Case number V-11508-19-UP-1 is a use permit request by Marine Farouk, the owner, to permit a rear yard setback of 11.5 feet to the deck instead of 21 feet to deck as required from the rear property line regarding a new elevated rear deck in the R6 zoning district on premise 1117 South Emerson Street. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution denying the use permit. Two alternative proposed resolutions have been provided should the BZA see fit to approve the use permit as advertised or with a 12-foot setback.
Thank you very much. Questions of Mr. Rissy?
I have one.
Go ahead, Ms. Malice.
Well, I just wanted to make sure, in the application for the use permit, the applicant has indicated that he will build an 8-foot, will build 8 feet away from the property line. that is not
Not the current request.
not the current request. And so it doesn't matter that that application says something different?
No.
Okay. And looking at the plats,
Yes.
I guess it's the after, there's there's some sketches there that, for instance, indicate a squaring off of the corner. Is that relevant to squaring off the corner of the building? Do you see that in the second? Or is
That's
it-
not part of the application.
That's not
They
part of the
may have been doing their coverage, I'm
Sorry?
guessing. They may have been just calculating their coverage and
Oh, I see.
coming up with some square numbers.
So it doesn't actually tell us where the deck is?
No, she's, sorry.
He's talking about that little odd on the,
I just was trying to understand what was being proposed, and that's not relevant to us.
no, I mean, because that's a side yard setback, and it's 23.4. They can reduce that. I mean, they can increase that to,
Right.
it looks like if they make that line straight somehow, it probably will be.
Yeah, I was not sure if that was even being proposed to be
No, they're not
built.
doing anything to that side of the structure at all.
And then just a general question, the measurement, there's a measurement of 13 feet shown to the, it looks like from the edge of the pad to the back, what, that dimension?
That was the applicant's agent dimension to the corner of the deck. Staff took the more conservative corner of the landing that is at deck level, which is, we consider to be part of the deck.
So that's 12.6, the corner of the landing there? Or, I'm trying to,
Mr. Rizzi, can you say that again?
So, as shown on the proposed plat, the applicant's agent has illustrated 13 feet to the corner of the deck, not including the stairs and landing. Staff, for the purpose of the application advertisement, took the more conservative 11 and a half feet that we estimated
Yeah,
from
because
the
that
corner,
corner
of the landing.
of the deck is closer.
Exactly, just a little bit.
Yeah, that corner's closer, Ms. Malice,
Right.
than the 13.
Right.
But it's unknown.
well, it's not specified here.
It's
Right.
not specified.
So
Staff is confident in the 11 and a half feet that we have
Okay.
advertised.
that's all right. Let's see.
So we have two choices?
And your alternative is a 12-foot setback for that corner.
There are two alternatives.
Yes.
Okay, one is for a 12-foot setback for that corner, and the other is, let's just see what it is.
Approval is advertised.
One is a denial.
Approval.
Denial.
Yes, the alternatives are approval as advertised or approval at 12 feet.
Yeah. But, I mean, as requested.
Can I ask one more question?
Go ahead, please, Ms. Malice.
So there was also a difference in the lot size between what is of record and what is being estimated by the surveyor,
Substantially.
substantially. While that's interesting, is it relevant to this decision?
Nope.
Is it relevant to anything?
There's
for
some
accuracy of the-
backstory where,
I think he should have to do it again.
not for this case, at this time.
I'm just,
Yeah,
What's,
Being facetious.
what's the difference?
it's, as shown on the proposed plat, the recorded is 5,281 and the computed is 6,265, so a difference of over a
Over
1,000,
1,000 square
or
feet?
just under 1,000
Just
square
under
feet.
1,000.
That also is the difference between making it conforming and non-conforming lot, right?
Yes,
6,000 would be conforming. and
Yes.
5,000 some odd is non-conforming.
correct?
So it's a potentially meaningful difference.
Well, it's meaningful for the applicant to advocate that he's got a substandard lot, thus requiring some relief.
If it was a variance.
Yeah.
If they're looking to construct a new house.
Also for a use
it's-
permit, I mean, when you say side yards, the reasonableness of side yard setbacks, if the lot is substandard in size, that
Right.
kind of militates for a little bit of flexibility with the side yards too. With a variance, it is much more significant, that's true. And toward the benefit of the applicant too, in a greater way.
All right.
But it's not going to take them above the 6,000. There, I mean, the computed and the recorded, how would such a big difference, 900 some odd square feet, come to be?
I can't answer that at this time. It's the largest discrepancy I've seen.
You didn't do the
The assessment
plat.
nor the plat, no.
Right. Okay.
It's pretty
Well, yeah.
Well,
It makes me wonder if the lot lines are where everybody thinks the lot lines
Yeah,
are.
something's off here.
Well, this is only this is only a year and, a couple of months old, a few months old, this plat.
But it's raising a lot of issues.
Yeah. So, was there a previous plat that supports the smaller lot size somewhere?
I'm not aware of any at this time.
I mean, it's that would be, go back and look up the
Yeah.
records kind of an activity.
Any building permits that are on record for anything that's been done, because clearly things have been done to this structure from the original structure.
Yeah.
I don't see any previous, let's see.
Yes,
Yeah,
there is.
84,
So they're using 52.
middle rear yard 18.5. So it,
In 84, there could have been a plat.
well, there would have been, yeah, there would have been a required plat to be filed, but that would have been
computed
one
on
of
the
those, non-electronic, non-GPS plats.
Yeah.
That would be less accurate than what we see in front of us right now. And that may be, well, who knows? Like you said, let's not venture. Okay. This is, we've got a couple people signed up to speak on behalf of this too. Any other questions of the staff on this one? And let's hear from Mayreen Farouk, the applicant. You've heard some of our internal discussion here with the staff. You've got a copy of the staff report, right?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Okay. Maybe you can help. First, do you have anything?
First,
Presentation,
I'm not
obviously.
Marion Farouk. I'm her husband, Harris Shaw at 1117 South
Okay,
Emerson.
give your name and address for the record then.
Sure. Harris Shaw, 111 South Emerson Street.
And spell your name.
HARISSHAWL.
Thank you. Okay. And you're the husband of the applicant.
And co-owner. Yep.
Co-owner.
And co-owner.
Listed on the.
Let's just see, I'm going, that's what, yep. Yeah, listed on the disclosure. Thank you, on the disclosure. Appreciate it, thank you. All right, well, let's hear what you have to say.
Okay. Well, thank you to the board. Appreciate everyone. Sorry, I'm the last one. I'll try to keep this brief, but first, I'd just like to note that the disagreement, 11 and a half versus 12, is over half a foot. And as previously was mentioned, the landing versus the actual corner of the deck being the discrepancy. So I'm glad to see that the council recognized that. The other topic I wanted to bring up was that I think a lot of the concern
Well, let me
relates.
ask, 11 and a half is okay? 12 is in the record, 12 was advertised.
Mhm.
No, it's the other way.
I mean, 11 and a half was advertised. So that's, you think that's enough to accommodate the corner of the deck?
Well, I guess what I mean to say is, like, we're discussing like half a foot, and then this sort of pertains to the next topic I was going to discuss,
Okay,
which
go
is
ahead.
specifically, I think the county is, in my understanding, is most concerned about air and light, as well as privacy for the neighbors as it pertains to the setback. So One of the things I wanted to mention was, and I've got some packets here for everyone to take a look at, if I can pass them out right now.
Please.
So if you'll take a look within the packets, which include 3 letters of support from the neighbors that are all adjacent to the property, there's actually a map that displays which neighbors marked by a checkbox for the ones that are identified that have provided the letters of support. But specifically, if you flip to one of the pages and to one of the letters from my neighbor Robert, there's a picture in there that shows the large amount of greenery and the fact that this property is actually on a hill, on the very top of a hill. So we have a substantial drop-off that happens for the next neighbor down, and there's a lot of trees and there's a lot of foliage that covers that. So from the perspective of maintaining privacy and air and light, this deck would not have any sort of effect on that based on the inability to build within that section that directly connects to the adjacent lot.
Okay.
Yep. And then, the
This
other
photograph is very helpful,
Okay.
by the way.
Sure, thank you. The other topic was the 3 letters of support from the neighbors that you'll see from Wendy, from Jason, and from Robert. And Robert, in particular, highlights the fact that he is the neighbor that's most close, actually, to the overall house. That a lot of the foliage does actually protect, and the hill does protect that privacy, maintain the air and the light, as we mentioned. So.
The photograph that you presented, which house is this taken from?
This is from Jason's house.
Which is the 5057?
Yes.
Chairman.
Mr. Owen?
Can you talk about your outreach to the neighbor directly behind you at 5053 12th Street?
So this would be one of the letters, or?
No, you did not present a letter from the property owner who shares most of your rear property line. That neighbor's address is 5053 12th Street, so
Gotcha.
the neighbor most directly behind you.
Absolutely, yeah. So I had reached out to the neighbors that I had relationships with since I had moved here about a year ago to the house. So I had had extensive interactions with Wendy and with Robert, and then I had also communicated with Jason because our properties connect. So I reached out to them thinking that this would be the easiest thing. And to be transparent, I got the notice very, very late. I've been on travel. My wife is actually overseas right now, so we sort of had to scramble to get all of this prepared for tonight.
Mr. Rissy, is this one of the applications that got our new notice, or is this one of the applications that did not get our new notice?
The application deadline for this hearing was the same day that you adopted V1, but the application deadline was earlier that day.
And
so
his
no,
was
the
even much
applicants
earlier. It was
did
on the
not
20th
have-
of August.
Okay.
And that was in September.
All right. So the challenge for us is that the neighbor we're most interested in is the neighbor who's going to be closest to the encroachment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you look on the plats, where's the spot on the property line that you're most closely encroaching to? It's
Mm-hmm.
the one adjacent to 5053. So that's the neighbor ordinarily we would be most interested in hearing from. So that's the challenge for us tonight.
Understood, yeah. I think the neighborhood outreach was a key part that we understood once we got a chance to actually take a look at the email and the notification, so yeah.
So it is helpful that you have another rear neighbor who is providing photographs. That's important mitigation for not being able to hear from the most directly behind neighbor.
Okay, understood, thank you.
I'm
Ms. Malice?
assuming that if I'm looking at this photo, the other neighbor is behind these trees.
I believe it's a little bit to the left, so partially with the trees, and then also, I guess if we can pull up, if there's another
You're talking
picture.
about 5053, Ms.
Yes.
Malice? Yeah.
I'm trying to- I'm
I was
trying to-
curious, too,
Mhm.
based on the photograph, where they were.
If
Yeah, so they wouldn't be fully covered by that tree, but it
Is
would
it,
be a
it's
portion.
50, I'm
To
sorry.
the far left of this
It's
photograph.
5053 on this side?
Yes.
So there's
Yes,
more
ma'am.
tree coverage on this side than there is here?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, on the right side?
I'm looking at this.
Okay,
this side.
okay, to the right, looking from this. This was taken from what address?
From the letter of support with the neighbors. So
50-50.
yeah, I don't think I have the
50-57.
plot number directly.
This is looking up from 5057?
Right.
That's correct.
Okay,
yeah.
about where you marked that that V?
Yep.
Yes, sir, yep.
Okay,
Yep.
good. Thank you, Ms. Malice.
So there's more
clarifying
tree
it.
coverage.
Yeah.
As you go in that direction.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Owen, for making that point. Even though they're even though they share a large rear lot line, it seems to be obscured largely by.
Well, maybe. It's
Maybe.
difficult in a two-dimensional photo to be sure.
Right.
However, Mr. Ricci, 5053 would have received a notice, a written notice.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Anything more from the applicant right now?
So,
Ms.
just a
Malice, go
question.
ahead.
Any reason you couldn't reduce your deck by 6 inches rather than us bending the rules here?
It's definitely something that we could consider. Just the resubmission of the application would be the only thing. So yeah,
Would it have to be resubmitted?
it would not. Okay.
We could approve tonight at 6 inches less than you asked for, if that's something you wanted to entertain.
Basically, the alternative that the BZA recommended. Yeah, it would be. Yeah, that would be acceptable too. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
Anything more?
Do we have other
Ricci?
speakers? Are there any speakers for this
Yes.
case?
I'm going to get to those. Any more questions of the applicant? Okay, don't go far. We have signed up to speak. Well, you don't count, Mr. Shaw.
Yeah,
You are
sorry.
the applicant. Mayrin Brennan and Eduardo Menia. Help me with those pronunciations. Welcome. You didn't indicate, neither indicated for or against. So let's hear what you have to say. And in order, ladies first.
I'm concerned. I'm concerned.
Okay, your name and your address.
My name is Maureen Brennan, 5053 12th Street South.
Perfect. Thank you.
I'm
And-
concerned, one, because of the variance, that it's coming too close to the property line, which would be all right, except now this deck is going to be 10 feet tall. And that is, I think, going to be a problem with privacy. And also, if it's not very well anchored, it can end up in my backyard.
Okay, have you seen the submission that the applicant just provided right today? You have not?
No.
Did you, do you have another copy of this, Mr. Shaw, that you? Okay, we've got one.
So do you mind if I'm Eduardo Minay, I'm her son-in-law.
Okay, good.
So I'm just trying, I think her biggest concern is the deck. It was hard to follow what the paper she received.
Right.
How high the deck it was going to be. Because Mr. Farouk mentioned there is the slope. So his backyard kind of goes on the slope.
Take a look at that photograph, the last page in that.
And because it goes to a slope, it was hard to follow how high is really going to be the deck. And she's concerned about her privacy because that will be technically overlooking on her backyard where she has her flowers, her garden, et cetera. And her second concern is really just the fact that if 10 years from now, 15 years from now, let's say Mr. Farouk sells a house and the deck doesn't get upkeep, yes, the part of that can end up being in her, if it falls or something falls, it could actually fall in her backyard. The property that I think this is where the picture came from, 5057, it really is a small amount of where the deck will touch.
Yeah, don't worry about that.
The 5053, which is her property, is really where, the majority of kind of the biggest, I guess,
Okay, what can be seen from her backyard right now?
Right now,
trees? Do you have trees and bushes in the summer that obscure part of this house?
You see the part of the trees, I think.
I
yeah.
can.
You can see part of the trees and a little
No.
bit of the
Let
fence.
me, Ms. Brennan, can you see through the trees?
We don't have any trees in the.
No, and their yard has trees.
No, we don't have trees.
Okay,
I
let's
guess
go
you're
back to one of the
referring to the
photographs we
bees.
have.
Don't have a tree.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr.
Mr.
Owen.
Chairman, I think actually the photo that was that photo, no? Yes. this photo might be helpful to ask the question.
And you don't have an overhead photo, do you?
She did.
It's behind us on the big screen.
No, no, no.
Over.
No, do you have an aerial photograph
From the front.
of the property? There you go.
All right.
All right.
So, yes. So here you can see, I think, no trees in between the two houses except for right?
Her house is this one, right there? Yeah, okay.
Yep.
It's red brick,
Yes, the red brick house.
so the trees in the photo are coming from the property down the right. Yes.
Yep.
And there are no trees.
Or the left, right, but not directly between. So, Mr. Chairman, if we might go back to the photo that was just up a moment ago.
Yep.
That one. And I'm sorry, ma'am, your name again? Your last
Brennan.
name? Ms. Brennan?
Your name, no, your
So
name.
from your property, how much of what's in this photo can you see? Can you already see this existing deck?
I can see the top of the deck, and
Yeah.
from there on up.
Yep. Okay. So and so I don't know. Maybe staff can answer this question. Do I understand correctly that basically this is proposing to enlarge this deck and push it farther at this same height, roughly, and
Correct.
push it farther back?
It would still exist as an exit from the house at that point, but it would be a larger deck.
Yeah.
At that level.
At that elevation,
No taller.
not taller or
And no
shorter.
second story on it.
But it would be the same elevation as what we're seeing in this photo,
Correct.
but bigger and closer to the rear of the property line.
Correct.
Okay. And then there's very steep topography. There's a steep hill at the back of the applicant's property that goes downhill to Ms. Brennan's property. And so a question it's not clear to me, and maybe one of the other photos in the application shows this, but maybe not, how close to the top of the hill do we get? Because Ms. Brennan is saying she's concerned that if it's too close to the top of the hill, as it ages, it might become a safety hazard. That's my understanding of one of her concerns. So do we have any illustration of how close to the top of the hill it would be?
I don't know what you mean by top of the hill. It's not going to be any taller. It's going to come closer to the rear lot line by about 6 feet from what you see right now.
Yep.
Because I suspect that's about a 4-foot wide deck right now.
Yeah, my point is, Mr. Chairman, that it's an extremely steep hill. It's at least
Right.
20 feet down, maybe
Mhm.
double that.
Mhm.
And so
It's almost vertical.
So at some point, as they go to the rear property line, they would have to build stilts that are 30 feet high, right? And I don't know what the exact
the slope
contours of the
start?
hill are in the rear of this house. I don't know whether 6 feet starts to push you over the edge. I don't know whether 12 feet starts to push
Well,
you
we
over
know
the edge.
that there is the rear lot line is, at that point, roughly 12 feet from the deck, or what they propose. Actually, it's a little further right here in this photograph.
The information that I would
How-
want is the ground
Yeah, how
elevation.
steep is the fall off from the structure right now?
Yeah.
And Mr. Shaw, can you answer that? Just stand by, Ms. Brennan. Come to the mic.
So if you take a look at the plat that's within the packet, the actual property line is probably the peak part of the hill. So it does extend, and there is a flat area right up until the end of the property
So
line.
what we're seeing right now in this photograph, that's relatively flat to the lot line, and then it falls off.
Yes,
And you
sir.
have retaining walls at the lot line?
So at the lot line, actually before, and there's a fence that's actually shorter than the lot line.
thought
There's
there
a
were two
substantial
retaining
amount of,
walls.
and you can see it in the picture, there's a lot of kudzu and a lot of vegetation, which actually retains the soil and does actually prevent that type of erosion. So, and then I believe the neighbor does have a retaining wall on her side as well. So it does maintain a fairly flat level right up until the property line. So it's not that it would be at the very tip of the hill, and any sort of concern on the deck having a structural failure would cause an issue. The other thing to note is we're going to be using composite material as well on this. It's usually double the cost to make sure the quality is top quality.
Okay. just for the benefit of the neighbor, seems like that from what you see right now in this picture, what he's proposing is going to come out about twice as far as what it is, a little bit more than twice as deep as you see right here. So there would be, if it were to fall, it would have to fall a long way away from the structure in order to go down the hill toward your property. And and given that it's on relatively flat land, it wouldn't fall downhill. It seems like the fall off is at the edge of the property line, and at the edge of yours. Probably the edge of yours goes up your backyard. So, anything else you all want to add, Ms. Brennan and her son-in-law?
No.
So you're concerned with respect to the privacy and the safety with respect to it falling?
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Owen?
Are we concluded with testimony?
I'm just want to find out if there's anything you all want to add in addition.
No, those two are her two
Okay.
concerns. Yep.
Good.
I would like to ask the
Okay.
applicant.
Go ahead, Mr. Owen.
Yes, I agree. Mr. Chairman, I think in this case, we haven't had any discussion directly between the applicant and, I'm sorry, in this case, we haven't had apparently any discussion yet directly between the applicant and the most affected neighbor.
Well, let's ask. Mr.
Chairman.
Shaw, had you discussed any of this or shown diagrams to your neighbor? And why is that? Come
He
forward to the
said,
mic.
he explained earlier, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I want to repeat that. 'Cause, I mean, she's living there.
Right, absolutely. So the bit of context was first, we got the notice very, very late. My wife and I were both traveling, so this was a situation where we reached out to the neighbors that we knew really well and had previous relationships with. That was one piece. The other piece was a couple of months ago, I had actually dropped a letter into their mailbox asking them if they had any concerns about me cleaning the kudzu because it was actually invading my fence line. And it was breaking through my fence. It actually shattered a couple posts. So I wanted to give them a heads up because that was adjoining to their property. I didn't get a response despite weeks of providing
about the kudzu cutting or
Exactly. So I had provided my cell phone and email address, and I didn't get a response. What I ultimately did was I went over the fence in what was still my property and cleaned out the kudzu manually, keeping within my property line so that it didn't invade my fence. So it was based on that interaction. I had not had a relationship. I had tried to reach out to all of my neighbors when I first moved.
Go ahead, Mr. Owen.
So anyway, there hasn't yet been direct interaction between.
But let me ask the applicant's neighbor, though. Did Mr. Your son-in-law, do you have any recollection of receipt of a letter with respect to cutting down the kudzu or anything like that? You had? That was received? Yes. Okay. All right. There, you don't have to address it. I just was wondering if it ever got through.
I got a note in my mailbox.
Okay.
Asking me or suggesting that, not a direct suggestion, but an overt suggestion, that we do something about the kudzu that's growing in the back.
Right.
And given me an email address to respond. When I don't give out my email address to casual letters that come in the mail, or don't come in the mail, that are dropped in the mailbox. And secondly, I'm doing nothing about the kudzu because it's there for a purpose. It holds back water.
Okay.
And my neighbors on both sides have kudzu growing. So what are we supposed to do? Get rid of all the kudzu because Mr. Farouk
I was
wants
just concerned whether the communication had been received, not the nature of it, but just whether it had been received.
I understand.
I got you.
No, an informal letter like that's left in my mailbox, I don't see how I can respond to that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Owen.
Now, having heard these explanations, I continue to believe that all neighbors have been reasonable up to this point.
Oh, yeah.
I think both the applicant and the neighbors at 5053 have behaved reasonably and understandably to this point.
Sure.
The fact is they haven't yet talked directly to each
Right.
other. And we encourage those direct
Absolutely.
communications. And it seems to me that if the concerns are structural integrity and privacy, that it might be possible for an engineer to provide Ms. Is it Brennan?
Brennan.
Ms. Brennan some assurance of structural quality, It may also be possible for the applicant to offer some vegetative screening or other screening to provide additional privacy to Ms. Brennan. I'm not saying that that's a requirement. I'm saying that's a discussion that would be helpful to have between neighbors and then allow the BZA to determine what the reasonable outcome is after that discussion has occurred. So I would say my inclination is to offer a shorter than usual deferral for those simple conversations to take place and hear this item in December.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Owen. I support 100% his position. I think, Mr. Shaw, that given your neighbor's concern, their proximity, the fact that they are willing to participate, they've come to the meeting, I think it's incumbent on you to have some discussion with them with respect to this personal, and in light of the fact that they're not going to respond to an email or a letter dropped in the box, encourage a meeting. And so I think Mr. Owen's suggestion is well put. Would you object to that? You're entitled to, you've heard Mr. Owen describe earlier, you're entitled to a decision tonight. Staff has recommended actually denial. Personally, I don't think your request is outlandish. I think there is, that it could move, that I could be persuaded to support it. But I think the point is that this neighbor who has taken her time out of her evening to come merits a discussion, a personal discussion about this in light of her concern about both safety and the privacy. So would you be willing to come back next month if this were deferred? Or you could get a decision tonight.
Yeah, so I guess the bits of context I want to add is that to Mr. Owen, I did reach out to this neighbor previously about a joint issue, and I didn't get a response at all. And I did do the effort of communicating with the neighbors that I have good relationships with. The other part is, like, I recently moved to this house as well. It's been about a year.
Yes.
And so I've been trying to make slowly connections and relationships with my neighbors because I understand the importance of that.
Well, let's just ask, but was that a qualifier? Was that
no,
a preface to...
Mr. Chairman, I want to be extra clear on this point. I don't think you have behaved unreasonably. I don't think they have behaved unreasonably. This is not about reviewing the past and what communications happened. I'm perfectly satisfied that everyone was trying to do their best with the information they had at the time. The information we have now is more, right? And now you could have the opportunity to exchange phone numbers and email addresses this very night and have a conversation for a few weeks and come back and bring us more information. More information. You talked to what are they called? A nursery to find out what plantings might work or not work, or it doesn't matter because it couldn't be tall enough and it would disturb your view, and they can talk about, you know, what their view is about what would be reasonable from that perspective. You could share your engineer's contact information so the engineer can assure them, like, and maybe they won't feel assured and they can come back and make their case for why they still feel there's a danger. All that can happen, but we would be making a more informed decision if you guys talk to each other, share your respective concerns with each other, and both of you can respond to us. Now, if it happens that through that discussion you guys happen to reach an agreement, all the better, right? Okay. But we're not expecting you to come to agreement. What I'm hoping is that you'll just have a discussion that will inform both of you about what to say to us in month. That's what I'm talking about. And it has nothing to do with you having been unreasonable up to this point.
Understood. Okay, and then I guess I have one other quick point. If you could go back one picture, please. So regarding the privacy, so there's a section of the house that was added before we moved in, but it's basically an overlook. And so from that window in particular, that's actually a higher elevation. And so I guess the privacy concerns, in my opinion, probably would have...
Let me stop you.
Okay.
And another person's point of view, it may appear unreasonable to you, but it's their point of view.
Right.
And I hear you. And you're making an argument that, well, there are other points that are even more, present a greater opportunity to invade privacy. So why should she be concerned about that? People have concerns. That's not what's before us. What's before us is a deck that a neighbor has expressed a concern about with respect to privacy. That's what's before us.
Understood.
And
okay.
that they're asking for an exception.
Okay, so yeah, then based on Mr. Owen's guidance, I would probably just recommend the deferral for
Sure,
the
you'd
discussion.
accept it. Good, and have the discussion.
Okay.
And maybe think about and present a plan with respect to, okay, I'll put in some, bushes that will provide
Right.
a greater visual buffer and
We're,
the like.
we're not
Not
setting forth
requiring
any-
that.
We're just
But it's
offering an
something that
opportunity
might
to
be
think
helpful.
about. Yep.
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Malice?
I think it would be helpful to have a photograph from your property, Ms. Brennan, of what you are seeing, just like we saw from the others. And if there is any opportunity for vegetation, try to visualize where the deck would.
Well,
where the deck would-
and we understand what a winter photograph is and a summer photograph too. We understand that in the winter, things appear more visible than they are in the summer.
And if the applicant could provide more photos from your property that show the topography and show the drop-off, maybe that would be helpful
Okay.
as well.
This was helpful, though, what you
Okay.
provided.
Yep, thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman,
Mr. Owen?
in case V-11508-19-UP-1, I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals defer this item to the December BZA meeting.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Mr. Owen, seconded by Ms. Malice to defer this matter to the December meeting for the purpose of having a discussion between the applicant and the neighbor who's come before us tonight. Any-
December 11th, okay. Thank you.
And I thank both the applicant and the neighbor for the time that they've taken to try to work through these issues tonight.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion to defer this matter 1 month signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. This matter is deferred. Thank you all very much. Thank you for coming. And hopefully next month we'll have we'll be able to move quickly with this. And these matters come at the beginning of the agenda, by the way, next month. They're what's called a carryover. So thank you for your patience.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Freshman?
I move approval of the October BZA meeting minutes.
Thank you very much. Is there a second approval of the minutes?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Owen. It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes as presented. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. These minutes are adopted. We've got a couple other things. The tentative BZA schedule, as you know, I won't be present for most of it that's proposed. There are also opportunities during the course of the year to adjust the schedule. Mr. Rissy?
If I may, I have some updates already from
Okay,
that.
good.
I literally made the tentative schedule the day
This
after.
is tentative 2 now being presented to us.
Yeah, I've just highlighted some dates that may need to change in the future. Specifically, the October 7th and November 4th dates will need to be amended as they currently conflict now with dates for the Planning Commission.
Okay.
June 17th may or may not be adjusted. It's currently the day after a county board hearing, which I try to avoid potential conflicts if they have to carry over. But depending on other uses of the room, that may end up being the best possible day.
We once had to wait an hour, right?
You sure did.
We're upstairs for something.
Up on the
that was
10th
a
floor.
carryover.
That was it was a carryover of the recess meeting of the county board.
Yep.
And then we had to.
We just hung out and they finished an item.
For the record, I can't make the April meeting.
The April?
April.
All right. Well, in order to provide a little bit of certainty, I wonder if it makes sense to approve this through March and then revisit because people are already scheduling stuff, now.
Well, let me ask Stephen, have you sought to plug in these dates on the room schedule?
So
Yet?
I have sought to put these on the room schedule, but
Good.
I'll have to adjust as I find other schedules that we don't have priority to the room.
No, I know, but you get bumped, but we're above, we're number 3, right? County Board, Planning Commission, and then BZA? Or are we beyond that?
I know BZA is ahead of Transportation Commission because I used to be the chair of Transportation Commission. I was once bumped by the BZA.
Okay. Okay.
I haven't
Hopefully that's still the
needed
status.
to or tried to bump anyone. I just try and reserve the room early enough that we don't need to do
That's
that.
right, that's right, that's right, that's right, that's right.
Can we
Well, I
lock
mean,
in
Mr. Owen's suggestion doesn't hurt us.
No.
As long as you have already penciled in on the master calendar these other dates.
Yes, just so long as you understand that if someone else who has priority to the room needs them, we get bumped.
Yeah, well, you bring that to to whomever is the chair at that time, and they.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt a work session meeting date of January 22nd and a hearing date of February 19th and March 18th, 2020.
And okay, it's been moved and seconded to adopt a calendar as proposed through March. Well, let me ask staff. That will, so these staff meeting date, the final filing advertising, those are, will be okay in accordance with this?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor of that, this limited schedule through March signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. This partial calendar is adopted.
That happens to run us through your last meeting, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
Is that right?
Yes.
Is that your intention?
Yes, it is my intention right now. My intention could change, but it is, yeah.
In which direction?
I think you should stay. We won't make you be in charge.
All right. No, I'm gonna. No, after March, I'm gone.
Okay.
I'm
You're
sold my-
telecommuting, yeah.
Yeah, my term ends, and I couldn't hold it longer than that because I wouldn't be a citizen. I'm not a citizen now, but I think my term allows me to
Resident.
stand.
You're a citizen. You're not a resident.
I'm not a resident. I'm a citizen of Virginia.
Yeah, I'm saying, you said you're not a citizen. I think that's.
No, I'm still I'm a citizen. I'm not a resident of Arlington anymore. That's
So are you on the board in the March hearing?
till March 7 it ends.
Yeah,
So
and this would
actually,
be-
February is
so
my
February
last
would be
meeting.
your last meeting.
February would be the
Yeah.
last.
All right. Bear that in
So-
mind. We'll make full use of you in January.
Judy,
Bring confetti.
Before you
run off, I wanted to ask about the work session. We need to craft an agenda for it.
Well, Peter sent me an email a few days ago suggesting, because, one of my objectives was to have bylaws and some procedures done before the end of my term. We discussed at the beginning. I said it was something I wanted. And so we've had some discussion about that. I personally, I don't think the resistance of the zoning administrator to engage is justification for not acting. On the other hand, Peter has suggested that we adopt some interim, if you will, procedures for during the January meeting. Obviously I want more, but hey, I'm not a zero person. I'll take something versus nothing. So if we establish something in terms of bylaws, procedures, take some action to, I think I would go full measure, because you give somebody an opportunity over 2 years to have input, and they don't, they've waived. That's my view. But I think that entertaining something is better than nothing. That's would be part of the agenda for January.
Okay.
The adoption of some of the things that we think could be done, and obviously during this period of time between now and January, those would be sent out, and we would have an opportunity to review those and individually comment. So that's part of what I saw for the January work session. And obviously, I think that talking to staff about the annual report that is due each year, that January would be probably our last opportunity to give them ideas for what we might want to see included. I thought last year's report was really good. I think that Stephen will provide a draft before, but that I like the kind of his depth with respect to issues and how he outlined areas of the zoning ordinance where we had a lot of activity. And so, and then maybe some then I guess the last two parts of it would be, where's our money? Where's my money? And number two, staffing. We're in this pinch. We were sued. We were sued. It was on the cusp of the end. Well, it was at the end of the suit that we garnered some defense. We may have been without a defense, and that was not a comfortable position to be in. And we have been told by the county attorney that we can't have that there are conflicts. That it's ex parte communication, and so I think this not having had it addressed our need for staff thus far is glaring now, and we're going to go into the second. We're going to go into a budget cycle. I mean, this is when the requests are being hammered out right now. This is when the department directors, may probably have passed their deadline for getting their budget in. Now, whether Mark has put us on or not, I would suggest, as Judy is shaking her head, that he hasn't. That his thing is,
we're not squeaky wheels.
Yeah, and the only person who he responds to is the county board. And if the new chair, I imagine it's going to be, I don't know, Katie?
Probably Libby.
Yeah, probably. I mean, she's up next.
Right, whoever's running gets to be chair.
Yeah, right. So we're not going to be on her agenda. So in any event, I think that's a part of the discussion for January. How militant should we be?
Yes.
I know. Well, how militant should you all be?
No, you can be our attorney.
You can hire me.
Yeah.
With your budget. I'll be your lobbyist.
We'll all give up half of our pay and give it to you.
So that seems like to me to be the January meeting. Get some something in terms of our operation passed, and develop a strategy for moving on our money and staffing.
Write it down, send it out.
Yeah.
There's a third thing that might be, we've talked of training back and forth.
There you go. Wonderful.
And
yep.
Am I wrong that Terry Russell once put out some suggestions to us as to?
You are not wrong. He talked about it multiple times on this dais, and he identified the training.
Workshops, so he would always let us know when there were
Yep.
workshops.
Yep.
They were always
Yep.
in Richmond at some time.
Or Lynchburg, or Roanoke. There was the Citizen League or League of Cities, or what's that entity?
But it was never even
VML, Virginia Municipal League. And I talked with Williams Claude, because one of his suggestions was, one of his comments when he was meeting with all the commission heads was, he said to me, what do you all think about training? I said, absolutely. I think everyone, staff included, would benefit by virtue of that. But yeah, and I went through that. We've been told of training sessions. They're outside outside this area. Personally, I have paid for CLEs on zoning law. But yeah, that's the kind of thing that should be it should be undertaken by everybody.
It's not in our budget.
Not in their budget.
Nope.
I know we've talked about that before, and we can adjourn if you want to do this off, the record. But we have discussed providing some funds from the zoning budget for training board members. We've identified a course I was going to try and attend this fall, but I actually didn't get one of the spots. We didn't sign me up in time. And so it's something that I'm hoping to go to whenever they provide it next, so that we can see if it's going to be a valuable resource.
Well, yeah,
for you or
no.
not.
just tell them no, that staff, this was my point to Williamson, that both of us, yes, staff and BZA, but staff is not in a position, it really isn't inappropriate for the staff to say, well, you should do this. Let's both go and let's decide. Because that's kind of our objection to, where's the staff on, and not you, but where's the zoning administrator on our bylaw procedures? And we haven't had, no response. So I was kind of adamant with Claude about that. Yeah, no, that's the wrong approach. That's, for lack of a better word, patronizing. No, we've been complaining about this. And so if training is wonderful, necessary, but yeah, no, we go at the same time. It's not the staff saying, well, this is appropriate for you. That's really not, and I'm not bashful. And I communicated that directly, just like this to him. I said, yeah, no. But
if I could clarify, we weren't going to try and decide whether it was appropriate or not. Honestly, we were looking at it from a perspective of, is it too remedial for you?
Yeah, well,
I mean, there's no point in sending
the same applies,
you guys to a 101 course.
That's just another way of saying the same thing. I wish that it were that staff had a lot of training and could bring back, because we don't dictate how staff is trained. So if you all went to training and brought back materials, that would be wonderful too, just to see. If you all were going there, you all aren't going there. I mean, historically, it's not just you. You're relatively new, but in the past, that's why Terry brought it up so often when he served here, because he complained, I'm sure he complained about it when he was staff here, when he was the zoning administrator, about the lack of it and the inability to get it. I represented government employees for a long time, and often one of the issues when there would be some disciplinary or work performance issue would be the worker not being trained, and the boss complaining about, lack of budget or lack of time to let staff off. No, that doesn't get you further. That's just, that's not moving forward. Mr. Owen.
First of all, let me say I completely agree with your remarks. And second, another issue that I think may be in the works is it looks like you're revising some of the forms that are being used in the application. That's at least, I don't know whether it's a short-term project or a long-term project.
Do you want the long or short answer to that?
Let's start with the short answer.
Okay, the short answer is the county is implementing a new online permitting system that we are moving towards. The BZA is in phase 2 of that. It launched this fall, and I'm already into the long answer.
Okay, so another thing that I think might be helpful is if forms are in some way being changed, that we have some input into what the forms ask for. And so that might be something we could also productively talk about in January.
Yep, I agree. So.
Okay, motion to adjourn?
Yay.
Or are we done?
Paul?
Yeah, and so in that light, maybe get us copies of what templates are, just like blank templates to have, so we can look at them and review them ahead of time. And we can have comments at the meeting.
Yeah, on some of these issues, if we, to the extent that we are permitted to work online, without actually convening, or at least do homework in advance, or things you can send to us, or questions you have for us, or questions you'd like us to ask you. It's 2.5 months before we would meet in January. So let's see if we can make that as productive a meeting as possible with homework.
It's 2.5 months before we meet in January, but we still have an entire December agenda, which got a little bit longer tonight. So we've got priorities.
We made it a little longer tonight. Well, we only made it one case longer.
Only one. A little bit longer.
2.
No, like 15 or 16.
I move we adjourn.
That's February. That's February for game. It's been moved by Mr. Owen, seconded by Ms. Freshman. Any further discussion of the motion to adjourn? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
The ayes have it. We're adjourned. Thank you all very much.